Lightning streaks the sky, illuminating the rain-drenched streets. And over the noise of the storm, someone asks two questions about whether the video has been released yet and whether the Supernatural Force Association has responded to it in any way. And since the association did not react in any way, it means that they do not want to reveal the source of supernatural power. As it turned out, these questions were asked by one of the criminals who attacked the students, holding them hostage. The children were in a panic, but they reassured themselves that the association shouldn't care, so they had to be saved. They just had to wait a little. And then one of the students decided to fight back against the criminals in order to at least try to stop them. But just as the daredevil wanted to do something, he was stopped by Lin Luan with the words that the teenager should not be a hero and control himself, because he could not do anything against the bandits alone. However, the guy was not alone, because the others were ready to help him, because everyone wanted to be saved. And there were only 4 criminals, so the students decided to join forces. But the bandits turned out to be not so simple, so they quickly noticed that something was being prepared against them, and ordered the teenagers to behave more calmly. And one of them had the power to increase in size, which looked very scary. The teenagers did not expect such a turn of events, so suddenly all their confidence in victory instantly evaporated. Although the criminal's accomplices with the strength of his height told him not to go too far with the children, he still hit one of the children with all cruelty. The blow was so strong that the blood of the unfortunate student scattered in different directions. This action frightened all the students so much that they began to panic and run away in all directions without even thinking. Lin Luan then realized that this was the perfect moment to save himself, and shouted about this to the guy, Ahao, whom he had previously stopped. But the daredevil once again decided to act like a hero, thinking not about himself, but about the others. After all, the student understood that not everyone would be able to escape from the giant, so he wanted to help as many people as possible. Then Luan remembered a situation from his childhood when he and 5 of his friends swam to the middle of the lake, and he returned alone, and then many scolded him for not helping the others. As a result, the rest of the children were saved by others, but many still blamed the boy for the fact that if his friends died, then their deaths would be on his conscience. Lin himself did not understand what he was to blame for, because he would not have been able to help the others, but at least he could save himself. Therefore, using the same logic, Luan told Hao that they needed to leave in order to save themselves first. The students realized that the best solution would be to duck, walk where there is no light, and head towards the door through which they can escape. But then the guys noticed a figure that was on the mother-in-law, but it was not clear who exactly it was because of the darkness. The stranger concluded that the turmoil was the best time to act. After these words, the unknown person jumped out of cover and struck one of the criminals, doing everything so quickly that he did not even meet resistance. As it turned out, the stranger's name was Ji Feng, and he was one of the most popular newly minted heroes with supernatural power from the association. And if he was here, it meant that the others were saved. The man waited for the best moment, and as soon as it came, the hero took advantage of it and quickly dealt with the villains. But Feng defeated only 3 of the 4 criminals because the last one hid in the crowd of fleeing students, but the hero himself did not know about it. Lin tried to shout to the man, however, due to the bustle he could not be heard. So the guy could not warn the hero and decided to save himself, hoping that Feng himself would fix everything. The hero himself from the association had already reported on the phone that he had dealt with everything, and almost all of the students had run out into the street, so he thought that everything was fine. But Feng relaxed early, because while he was distracted, he was attacked from behind by a 4th criminal, whose existence the hero did not even know about. So he was not prepared for this attack. And then, unexpectedly, the man was saved by a boy, who kept repeating to himself that first of all he needed to save himself. And in the end, he jumped under the attack of the villain in order to save another person. Lin again remembered that moment from childhood, because it was then that the boy wanted to become a hero, when he saved the rest of the guys thanks to the fact that he swam quickly and was able to loudly call for help. In this situation, the student really acted like a real hero, because by sacrificing himself, he saved the man. According to the criminal, Ji Feng is a vile person, because he hid in the crowd in order to attack later, and the villain was glad that he was able to escape in a timely manner. Then the villain began to discuss how he could punish the boy for preventing the murder of a popular hero, who would no longer be alive if not for Luan's act. Then Ji Feng ordered the criminal to release the student, but would agree to this only if the hero threw away his sword so that everything would be fair. The villain ridiculed the man who is the hero of the association, but at the same time it is he who is saved, and not vice versa. In the end, the hero had to make this deal so that the criminal would stop torturing the teenager, so he had to throw away his sword. According to the criminal, Feng without a sword is not his opponent, so he began to rejoice, thinking that he could now win this battle. However, while the villain rejoiced at his still unattained victory, the hero was able to grab the sword again and deal the enemy a blow that he did not expect. So Fen managed to cut off the criminal's hand, in which the guy was located, and he simply fell to the ground, hitting him hard. The hero, in turn, simply apologized to the student, explaining to him that the situation was simply critical, so it was necessary to act quickly, otherwise someone else might get hurt. Luan became a hero who saved everyone, but unfortunately, no one could save the teenager himself, who simply remained lying on the ground. Finally, Feng only told the boy that the blow was fast, so Lin should not have felt anything, so he would die without pain. Feng's savior did not understand how the hero could kill him without hesitation, because the man could have come up with something to save the teenager, but Ji simply did not want to come to the rescue. And then Lin saw a sign, as if in a game, which said that the guy had a chance to be resurrected, and then the question of whether he wanted to take advantage of this chance. Saving the hero, Luan himself died, and now his funeral was taking place, which took place on a cloudy, rainy day. Meanwhile, Feng received thanks for being able to heroically rescue more than 200 people yesterday at 8 in the evening at Wencheng High School, where the attackers had taken all its students hostage. The news said that Ji Feng had once again proven that their city's security could be relied upon. And while Feng listened to the enthusiastic cries in his direction, and Lin Luan's mother cried at his funeral, he himself chose to be resurrected in this mysterious tablet. An inscription appeared on the sign that regeneration was complete, and then the question arose whether to accept the reward, which was the use of an ability called capture. Lin decided that this ability would not make him any worse, continuing to regenerate with the thought that he should teach Ji Fen a lesson. Therefore, Luan decided to accept this ability, wanting to take revenge on the hero for leaving the guy to die without even trying to save him. It turned out that as soon as he agreed to a second attempt at life, he was returned to the moment when he died. So he immediately found the hero and attacked him from behind. Fing was talking on the phone at this time, reporting the situation, so he didn't expect that anyone would attack him. Therefore, the man was unable to find his bearings when Luan bit him on the shoulder, so hard that blood gushed out. With the help of the blood that was shed because of Lin Luan, the guy was able to analyze the hero's abilities, learning that among them were shadow walking, snake execution, crow's tenacity, and breathing method. And this analysis was done for a reason, because the surviving student can absorb one of the granted abilities. When the hero saw that the student was still alive, then, with the question of why he had not died yet, Feng began to strike the boy. Luan, meanwhile, was thinking about which of the available abilities he should choose, and eventually settled on the shadow approach. Thanks to this strength, the teenager was able to dodge the blow that the hero wanted to inflict on him. But the problem was that Lin had no idea how to use and control this ability. Feng noticed the power the boy used, and then told him that it was quite ordinary, so the hero would not be surprised by this, because he did not know that this ability was stolen from him. As a result, both young people used this ability, but only one of them knew how to use it. Of course, the man's advantage was obvious, so he was already ready to deal a fatal blow to the student, whom, on the contrary, he was supposed to save. But this was not allowed to happen, because after the bite, the hero's DNA began to change, so that suddenly he simply froze in place. And then Feng simply laid down his sword without making the blow with which he so wanted to take the life of the one who saved him. The guy himself did not understand what had just happened, because he was already sure that he would soon die again. Then it appeared before Luan's eyes that the subjugation was completed, and he received a new slave, and after that the hero called him master. The guy learned that his abilities include the fact that after analyzing the enemy's abilities, he will be able to bite him and absorb one of them. And the student also introduces a systemic factor into the enemy's body, thereby rewriting his genetic code, forcing him to obey. Luan was surprised that the hero just wanted to kill him, and now he obeys. And after that, Feng apologized to the guy, calling him master, and Lin, in turn, asked not to call him that. After this, the guy began to scold the man for attacking so recklessly, and because of this, casualties could not be avoided, to which the hero replied that sacrificing several civilians to stop the villains is normal practice. Then the student began to become disillusioned with the association, because one of the most popular heroes tells him things that don't seem right, which means that the rest are most likely the same. Lin Luan was so surprised by this whole situation that he still did not believe that Feng was under his control, so he decided to test it by ordering the man to kill himself. The hero answered without hesitation that he was listening, ready to do whatever the student ordered him to do. And Feng was really ready to do this, because he even took out his sword for this, then bringing it to his neck. But at the last moment, when the hero was already on the verge of death, Lin ordered him to stop, because he initially did not expect that his words would be heeded. Luan decided that let the man live for now, but he still decided to mock him, ordering the hero to take off his pants while the teenager himself recorded it on his phone camera. Feng carried out all the orders of the student, and he, in turn, decided to disgrace the man by forcing him to take funny photographs. The student found it very funny, and he even imagined how he would show this to the girls he knew, because they would go crazy because of it. But then Luan's fun was interrupted by a girl who quietly approached the teenager mocking the hero. And it so happened that this heroine came in at the wrong time, because she saw something that would be very difficult to explain. Then, Lin ordered the man to quickly get dressed, while he himself looked at the girl, who turned out to be unfamiliar to him, so he began to guess that she was also someone from the association. The heroine came for the hero, but told the boy that it was time for him to leave too, because his parents were probably already terribly worried. Finally, Luan gave his slave an order that the man tell a press conference tomorrow about everything that happened today. Feng responded that he was listening, and this short dialogue attracted the attention of the woman, who was surprised at what she had just heard. After this, the teenager ran to his mother and friend, who were very worried about the unexpectedly missing guy. Everyone immediately began to worry about the student's condition, but he began to reassure him with words that the boy felt great. The Supernatural Power Association building was simply colossal in size, cutting through the skies. It was to this building that Ji Feng and the stranger who came to pick him up went. The girl stopped the hero, who was about to leave, and then asked if he had a minute. As it turned out, it was 10 minutes before the press conference, so the stranger did not have much time to talk with the man. The question that the heroine so wanted to ask was whether the boy with whom the man was found was his fan, because the stranger was very curious about it. And then the girl asked if Feng had written down the tags that he was going to cover, finally asking to look at them. Luan, meanwhile, realized that he could activate the ability only for points, of which he had 50 when revived, but at the moment 0, and he did not know at all what to do to get it. But in the end, the guy decided that now was not the best time for him to think about it, because he was very tired, and only wanted the lessons to end as quickly as possible. Due to loss of strength after past events, Lin did not listen to the teacher at all, but simply practically slept during the lesson. And as expected, this was noticed by the teacher, who did not at all like what Luan was doing in class instead of mastering the educational material. Teacher Ju made the guy stand up and repeat to the class what Newton said, and the student, in turn, explained that he still couldn't recover from yesterday, and that's why he was so absent-minded. But they didn't even want to listen to the student, telling him to return from heaven to earth because it was just an accident. So you need to think not about what happened, but about the fact that there were only 2 months left before the state exam. However, Lin was not so sure that the attack was just an accident, because the school is always under guard. But yesterday, when the guards changed, in 20 minutes, the attackers were able to easily enter the institution, but it remained a mystery how they did it, because the time of the changing of the guard is determined in advance, and the schedule for changing the guard is only available in the training section, so it was unclear how this information reached the criminals. Then one of the students asked that Luan really wanted to say that the school unit conspired with the attackers so that they could take over the school. Lin explained to this student, whose name was Wang Tianhao, that this was not what he meant at all. But Wang continued to argue with him, arguing that there could be no other meaning in the boy's words. As a result, the teacher stopped this argument, ordering Lin Luan to spend the rest of the lesson standing, punishing him for his behavior. And then Luan saw that he was awarded 1 point for causing hostility on the part of Zhu Dayun, who was the teacher. And this greatly amazed the boy, because it turned out that you can earn points by arguing with the teacher. During recess, the teenager's friend asked how he was feeling, to which the guy replied that he was really hungry, so he needed to fix it. There was already talk in the class about who would take what exams, and everyone assumed that Wang Tianhao would take the exam in the specialty of supernatural power, because the guy was the strongest in the school. Then the student told the others not to worry because he already had enough power to protect them all. And then Van again focused his attention on Luan, telling him that the guy is an egoist who is only thinking about how to escape. After these words, rumors began to circulate around the class that Lin Luan had run away during the attack on the school. But the lives of his comrades did not bother him at all. But the teenager was not at all upset by this, because before his eyes he saw that he had received another 10 points due to the fact that he had aroused hostility from his classmates due to selfishness. Luan's friend then stood up for him, telling Wang Tianhao to shut his mouth and not say what he didn't know. The guy with green hair responded to this by saying that Lu Jiahao is most likely the same as his friend Lin, because whoever you mess with is what you get. And then Wang emphasized that Lu was talented enough. So there was a chance that after passing the psionics exam, the guy would stop being attracted to such a non-entity as Luan. But these words only angered the protagonist's friend even more. But Tianhao was not afraid of threats, because he was the strongest, so the students could not do anything to him. Confident that no one would touch him, Van was unable to fight off the slap that unexpectedly flew at him. And then Luan, who hit the guy with green hair, received another 5 points for starting a fight with a classmate and causing hostility on the part of Wang Tianhao. And then the main character realized on what principle he was awarded points. It turns out that Lin Luan becomes stronger thanks to bad deeds, which seemed to the guy a rather strange system. Then the student decided that it was time for him to become bad, because since others can be insolent and pretend to be strong, then why can't he do the same? But all the hero's agility evaporated the moment that the offended Van began to approach the guy, clearly not with friendly goals. The offended student even decided to use magic to take revenge for the blow his classmate dealt him. The guy almost struck, but the main character managed to escape, avoiding his terrible fate. However, the offended student did not want to give up so easily, so he decided to throw another blow called the Thunder Palm, which was the technique of the guy's family. But even here Luan was lucky, because he managed to escape without receiving more than one blow. And while Wang Tianhao was looking everywhere to finish off his brave classmate, he himself decided to have dinner, because he was really hungry. The main character has already eaten 4 pizzas, 2 baked chickens, and 5 steaks, for which he received another point due to gluttony and hostility on the part of the cafe owner. Lu, meanwhile, asked his friend what he was going to do next, because the situation was quite dangerous. But Lin simply decided that he would hide, and that's it, and would not do anything else because, fortunately for him, the next day would be a day off. But the protagonist's friend started talking about the fact that there is a reagent that can turn anyone into a psionicist, and then asked Luan if he would like to try to become one. Lu noted that his friend is strong enough that even he sometimes finds it difficult to defeat the guy. And if this is all because of the reagent, then the Jiahao family is ready to help Luan with money. But the hero noted that since they are friends, then talking about money is inappropriate. And besides, the reagents will cost several tens of thousands. Luan cannot sit on the neck of his friend's father. And then the guy remembered that a press conference was currently being broadcast, so he asked the waiter to turn on the TV. At the press conference of the Association of Supernatural Power, it was said how the hero defeated 4 attackers. And at that moment, when the talented psionicist Ji Fen was called onto the stage, a stranger appeared in his place, who had previously wanted to talk to him. The girl announced that Feng would not be able to attend the conference because due to the multiple injuries he received the previous day, he was urgently hospitalized. This shocked everyone, because just yesterday everything was fine with the man, and no one expected that this could happen. Luan did not understand at what point the hero managed to get injured, because at most, he could have simply been scratched. And then he received a message that his subordinate was dead, on the same screen that the guy began to see after his revival. The girl on TV said that the hero would not be able to perform in the near future, and then offered to pray for the recovery of the psionicist. And meanwhile, the student did not understand why this stranger was lying. In the end, Lin guessed that the culprit was that the hero was ordered to tell the truth about his actions yesterday. So he was removed, so that he could not discredit the association. After this, the teenager began to worry that he too might be wanted because of yesterday's incident. Because if the association found out about him, the guy would face the same fate as Fen. So Luan decided that he needed to be careful with the use of his abilities so that no one would find out about them. And the hero was also pressed by the fact that on Monday, he had to meet with a classmate whom he had recently hit. But for now, he decided not to think about all this. So he went to his mother and asked if there was anything to eat. And then the teenager noticed that his mother was behaving strangely, as if she was hiding something important from him. Suddenly, someone started knocking hard on the door, shouting that it was opened as soon as possible. It was the aunt who came running to ask how much money the boy's mother had transferred to the fund. It turned out that the grandson of the director of a pharmaceutical factory went on the run, taking with him the money collected by the fund in the amount of 10 million. And the goods turned out to be fakes that did not bring any effect. And Luan's mother transferred 100,000 to these scammers, which was the allowance of the woman's father, which is paid one time to the family of the deceased. This is how the hero found out that his mother had purchased a reagent for a lot of money to improve her son's health. And she did this because of the day when Lin did not leave school for a long time. and the woman's plans simply included a desire to help her son become stronger. People who also fell for the scammer's promises began to organize strikes to get all their money back, so that there was a chance that they would achieve something. Then the teenager said that he wanted to go for a walk, and then added that there was no need to worry about him because he was just kicking a ball with Hao. But Luan did not go to play ball at all, but in fact he went to the place where the strike was taking place. And while the strikers were discussing what they would do next, Lin calmly jumped over the fence protecting the factory. The teenager found the CEO's office, and then decided that he needed to find clues, such as the address where he or his accomplices lived, and then the student could easily settle everything. And then an unknown man came to this office, asking the hero why he came to this place. Luan recognized this young man as the leader among the protesters, and then explained to the man that the back door was open, so he slipped through. Then the protester said that he understood everything, and then smiled. And this smile did not coincide with the fact that the sign appeared with a message about +1 point for hostility on the part of Lubin. It turned out that Lubin was the main one among the protesters, and the teenager did not understand where the hostility came from if the student wanted to expose the fraudster. Suspecting something, Luan asked the man how he himself got into this office, and he said that he also went through the back door to look for clues. Then the boy began to talk about how the thieves would definitely get what they deserved, because everything would come back to them like a boomerang. The young man somehow hesitantly agreed with the guy's words, and he, in turn, saw that he received more points for hostility on the part of Liubin. Then Lin realized that the man was an accomplice of Sun Chigong, and he was pretending to be injured only in order to divert suspicion from himself. The teenager decided to use his capture ability, which cost him 50 points that he had previously accumulated thanks to the hatred of his classmates. Using his power, the guy learned that the scammer's abilities include speaking, boasting, legal knowledge, and culinary skills. With the help of a high level of performance, one could act in films or become a fraudster, so the student decided to take this particular skill. And while Lubin threatened Luan, he, in turn, was only waiting for his ability to finally take effect. Finally, when the power began to act, the man fell silent, and then simply called the student master, awaiting orders. Then, the teenager ordered the scammer to explain why he was pretending to be the victim, and he began to explain that there were 3 reasons for this, including the desire to find out how the protesters were feeling, to also become their leader, and to gain their trust in order to deceive again. After listening to his subordinates' plans, Luan ordered him to be taken to Sun Chunggong. Meanwhile, at the Jade Pond Hotel, the girl admired a gemstone called Azure Mica, which had a very high market value. And the owner of this jewel was the same swindler who boasted to the girl that, with the help of this stone, he would increase the family fortune. Then the stranger asked Chengong if he planned to hide for the rest of his life, because everyone was looking for him, and he should be afraid that he might be discovered. To which the man replied that people are like fish, because they remember for half a month, and then they forget. Then it will be possible to return. Also, the scammer had 6 bodyguards, so people didn't scare him at all. The main character ended up in this hotel, brought by Lubin, carrying out the orders of his master. Thanks to his subordinate, the guy was able to get past the security without any problems because the man said that he belonged. So the student and his practically slave reached the main swindler, who immediately asked his accomplice if he was able to calm down the rioters. Driven by anger, Lin headed towards the one who had defrauded his mother of a lot of money. And while the scammer was not expecting it, the teenager hit him, putting all his hatred into this blow. The blow was so strong that Chunggong began to bleed, and at that time the hero called him a worthless boor. The student threw the man to the floor, and the girl was very scared of this and therefore began to scream. But Luan's subordinate quickly reacted to this, telling the guards not to pay attention because everything was fine. And while the guards thought that their owner was just having fun, the student was able to beat him to his heart's content as punishment for deception. When the swindler was asked where all the stolen money was, he replied that he did not have it, because he had invested everything in new spar. In the man's opinion, it was not just a stone, but a mountain mineral that he bought from the Wang family's pharmaceutical company. So there was a high probability that it was not a fake. And the criminal sold ordinary stones to people because he took all the spar for himself because he is a gemologist and knows about stones. Then the main character thought that the skill of knowing stones would be useful to him in order to find spar. Luan decided it was time to bite Chunggong to gain his knowledge of gemology. But the guy was unable to activate his ability because he did not have enough points for this. However, the student did not want to back down, so he already began to think about who he could earn points on. In the end, he decided to settle on guards who were ordinary people and not psionics, but they still paid a lot for them. The boy ordered his subordinate to go out to the guards and say that they were all fired, and he himself, an ordinary student, would be in their place. The man obeyed his master's orders and did everything as he was told, and then added that the guard's place was in the trash heap, not here. Meanwhile, Luan noticed the spar, and then decided that it was in it that the thief had invested a fortune. When the guy looked at this spar, for some unknown reason his appetite increased, as if he had not eaten for a whole week. Therefore, the teenager could not resist and, without thinking twice, ate this precious stone. After this, the hero felt the power overwhelm him, and then he understood exactly how spar should work. And while the guy was enjoying the feeling of strength, the guards decided to interrupt him in order to sort out who was causing them to be fired. It turned out that these guards were from the most famous company providing personal security services called Cheetah. And since this company had professionally trained people, the money they paid for them was not small. But even these mercenaries who have extraordinary skill could not defeat the boy who ate the spar. The student had so much strength that even he himself was surprised at how much his abilities had improved. Looking at the tablet, the main character realized that he now had enough points to use his power. The man did not understand what the boy who burst into his room was up to, but even without knowing what would happen next, he was still very scared. The first thing Luan ordered his new subordinate was to stop crying, because the man still could not calm down after the bite. It became clear that after submission, the characters of those bitten remained the same, which was only to the benefit of the student, because he did not want them to become soulless puppets. But the most important thing that Lin realized was that by hating his subordinates, he also gets points. And since everyone hates Chunggong, then he will get a lot of points from this. Luan first thanked the swindler for bringing his master so many points, and then the hero could not restrain himself and hit the thief again, because such an amount of hatred shows that he deceived a large number of people. Remembering the people, Lin ordered his subordinates to compensate for the damage to those who were deceived within 3 months, and then added that this could be done either with money or with real spatulas. Later, the teenager asked Chunggong if the Wang family knew about the man's machinations, because this was the family of his classmate, to which the man replied that these people really knew about everything. The hero also gave an order that as soon as his puppets completed the task, they would still have to cooperate with the Wang family, deceiving only them, but not other people. Subordinates will have to find out more about this family, find out what else they are doing illegally, collect all the evidence and report to their master. The boy left his number for the men so that they would always be under his supervision, and then asked where else he could buy spar on the cheap. Then Luan was advised the Schumann market, where many people sell spar, and although you can find real ones, there are also plenty of suspicious people, so you need to be careful. And while Lin was calmly walking around the market looking at the goods, a man ran into him and practically swept the teenager off his feet. On the phone, the man talked about getting rid of the goods as soon as possible, and as soon as the hero recovered from the blow, someone crashed into him again. But this time it was a girl who had previously been talking on the phone that the suspect was heading towards Liulu Lane. The teenager asked the stranger if they had all agreed, and she, in turn, apologized and hurried forward. It seemed that the stranger was running after exactly the man who had encountered Luan before. But then everyone saw that this was not just a man running past, but a man with real strength. The stranger swung at the girl who was chasing him in order to somehow try to stop her. But with this blow, the man also hit ordinary passers-by. And then Lin noticed that this stranger had the ability of gigantism, like the villains from school, so most likely this person was their accomplice. Then another man appeared and began to order the others to cordon off all the passages and drive the criminal to the old alley, because there were no people there. It turned out that it was the Thunder Tiger Wang Man, Wang Tianhao's uncle, who constantly bragged about him in class. A classmate was always bragging about his uncle, who was a 5-star psionicist, so Luan immediately recognized the man. Seeing the criminal, the hero immediately attacked him, activating his abilities to attack. The villain tried to escape, but he failed because the psionicist was much faster, so he quickly found himself next to the criminal. And while the runner did not understand what was happening and simply looked at the man, he used his strength, striking. The attack was so strong that the criminal was thrown several meters away. The man began to beg the tiger not to kill him, and then promised that he would not say anything, and might even swear to it. And then, the psionicist replied that he believed the man's words, because the dead can be trusted. The tiger began to ask the criminal where the goods were, and if he answered, then they would even be able to identify his corpse. And then the person running away began to say that he would tell everything if he was released. Wang Man then added that if the man does not tell him, the psionicist can easily find another approach to obtain information. Then the criminal decided to fight for his life, but the tiger only ridiculed him, calling this attempt child's play. The 5-star hero was able to tear his opponent apart with one blow, without even putting in much effort. And Lin also saw everything that was happening, because he followed his classmate's uncle to see where he was going. Due to the fact that the guy crawled out of his hiding place because he was too shocked by what was happening, it seemed that the tiger noticed him. Although the teenager managed to hide, the psionicist still heard some noise and asked who exactly was hiding like that, when the guy himself already understood that he was finished. The main character understood that since he heard this conversation, they would definitely not leave him alive. So he needed to come up with something quickly. Then the guy decided to bite the man, but it turned out that he did not have enough points for this, because the enemy's life force exceeded his own. Meanwhile, the tiger was getting closer and closer to the boy, who didn't know what to do now. And then some noise was heard nearby. The psionicist was distracted by it, so this was a chance to escape, which the teenager immediately took advantage of. However, the man still managed to see the man running away, but could not see who exactly it was. But Wang Man was not going to let go of the one who overheard such an important conversation so simply, shouting that the guy should not even think about escaping from the man. The psionicist ordered the others to capture the teenager, thinking that he was an accomplice of the defeated criminal, so everyone rushed to search. Lin kept running away, hiding behind different buildings, and then he realized that he had wandered into a dead end and would no longer be able to escape from those who were looking for him. The teenager had already decided that now the end would definitely come for him, because there was nowhere to run, and the opponents were already approaching. But then hands appeared from the wall. These hands grabbed the guy, covering his mouth so that he would not make unnecessary sounds that could give him away. As a result, the tiger and his team did not see anyone behind this wall, and Luan did not understand how this happened. And while the boy was one step away from his opponents, they decided that he had managed to escape. Then the guy realized that he was saved by a girl named Shilili, who was an inspector, because it was written on her badge. And then suddenly the tiger, out of anger, hit the wall where the guys were hiding. But fortunately, the blow did not hit the people, but it was very close to them, so they were very lucky that they were not hit. And then the people of the 5-star psionicist informed him that the goods had been found, thereby diverting his attention, which had previously been focused on finding the guy. Then the tiger ordered everyone to leave, leaving the one who overheard his conversation, because he had other things to do than play tag with the unknown boy. As soon as the man left, Luan began asking Lily a large number of questions, but the girl did not answer any of them, ordering the guy to leave quickly. Lin was surprised at how indifferent the girl who saved his life was. In the place where the goods were hidden, the tiger began to interrogate the man working there, asking him if the man whom the man had recently killed had any other accomplices, to which he received the answer that the man killed was the last one. These criminals worked together with Chunggong, engaged in robberies, and then hid the spar among the building stones to ward off suspicion. And then the girl who saved the guy turned to the tiger, calling the man a commander, and he then asked if it was her doing that someone managed to hide from him. After that, Wang Man asked Lily if appraisers had been sent with her, because they needed to be sent to this place as soon as possible. Then the student decided that the girl and the Thunder Tiger were from different squads, and the man wanted to remove Lily in order to take sole possession of the spars. The tiger, meanwhile, told the girl that her inspection department could only inform and disturb others, and then ordered her to get out. And since Lily needed someone who knew about stones, the guy decided to pretend that he was from the civil service, because he had talents for performing in gemology, so he could handle it. Then the boy asked if he would need to find spar here, and then said that it was nearby, so he quickly came. And then the guy pretended that he was a big fan of the tiger, and then introduced himself to him as Lily's friend and gemologist. After the teenager finished admiring the man, he said that he would get to work for now. Wang Man asked the girl if it was really her friend from the inspection department, to which she gave a positive answer. Although the guy knows that spar is a crystal formed through diopsidation and under the influence of supernatural forces, it can also be found in vegetation, in animals, but most often in minerals. The teenager introduced himself as a gemologist, a specialist who certifies stones based on their texture, color, and subtle fluctuations in supernatural power. But the problem is that he knows nothing about it. And then the guy saw in the sign that he could use glasses to increase the level of abilities that he had. While the student was figuring out his powers, people around him began to doubt that he would be able to find something. Meanwhile, the tiger was thinking that from the back of the boy, he looked like the one who was able to hide from him. Suddenly, the guy asked everyone to be silent because they were interfering with his search. But people continued to say that Lin was only fooling them. because such a young specialist would not be able to cope with such a difficult task. Meanwhile, Luan raised the level of gemology to master, so now he began to feel the fluctuations of supernatural power. Then the guy turned to those whose strength is very great, because such people interfere with his work, and he told them not to breathe, because it would confuse him. After this, the newly minted gemologist immediately found level A spar, because he felt the power that came from such stones. As a result, out of 32 boxes, 12 were level C spar and 2 were level A. The boy marked everything, and told the others to deal with the loading because he himself is not a psionicist, so physical labor is not for him. After that, Lin went with Lily, telling her his thoughts that the tiger most likely wanted to remove the girl in order to take everything for himself. And besides, the man was familiar with those villains, so they were probably in cahoots. And when Lily asked about the evidence, the student told her that she was an inspector from the association, so she could investigate the case and find evidence herself. Then the girl explained that Wang Man was the commander of the 9th detachment of the reconnaissance group, so she could not open a case against him based only on the student's words. Lily explained that there was no way to dig under the tiger, and then asked the guy for his number and address. Luan decided that he was able to interest the girl, and she asked for his information so that she can then call him on a date, which the guy was very happy about, although he gave his school address instead of his, so that his mother would not have questions, and then added that he was studying at last grade. However, Lily did not ask for this data for herself, but for the association, which could reward the student for helping them in the investigation. And then the guy added that he didn't need a reward, and it would be better if the girl just allowed herself to be bitten, after which he received a point for Lily's hostility. After this, the girl reported to her boss that the spar was found thanks to a high school student who had an amazing ability for gemology. The teenager's thoughts were occupied with the fact that he needed to find evidence that would prove the tiger's guilt, because Lily said that without evidence she could not do anything. The goal of the scammers was to make money at the expense of gullible people, and if the scammers were in league with the Thunder Tiger, that meant they were with the entire Wang family. The guy was worried that no one had come to class yet, although many usually come early, but for some reason everyone decided to be late. And then 2 of Luan's classmates began to discuss that no one came to class because Wang Tianhao and Lu Jiahao scored the arrow, so they ran to look at it. Many students gathered on the sports ground to watch the fight between 2 classmates, and then Li managed to hit his opponent so hard that he fell to the ground. Then Jiahao said that he won, because they agreed that whoever falls first loses, which means that Wang must now keep his promise and not bother Lin Luan anymore. However, Tianhao didn't want to accept that he lost, so he said that he didn't care about words and continued to fight. And then someone from the crowd pushed Li, causing the guy to lose his balance and be distracted from his opponent. Van took advantage of his classmates' confusion and hit him hard, saying that he was the strongest in this school, so he could not be defeated. Tianhao summoned his ability to hit his opponent so hard that his bones were broken, so that he could then be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Wang had already swung but could not hit, because he was prevented by Lin, who was in time to save his friend. No one knew that Luan had such power, so everyone present was surprised by the guy's appearance. After this, the hero asked his friend why he started fighting with his classmate, because this was not a solution to the problem. And then Lu explained that he was just tired of seeing his friend hiding every day after school, so he decided to settle the matter. Meanwhile, Van was so angry about what had happened that he even blushed from the overwhelming emotions that overwhelmed him. There were many voices buzzing in the crowd of those who saw everything. Some said that Vaughn was no longer the strongest in the school, while others believed that the guy was simply attacked unexpectedly, and that was why he could not dodge. Tianhao didn't like being humiliated like that, so he was willing to fight further to uphold his honor. The friend's enemy was furious, so they already began to think about what they should do now, because running away was probably not an option at all. Lu asked his friend to teach him the blow that was used on their opponent as soon as possible. Then the teenager began to teach that he needed to concentrate, then concentrate all his strength, fueled by anger, in his legs and run. While running away, Lin also managed to ridicule his opponent, so that they ran after him. Luan was able to run far enough so that he and his classmate were alone, and then admitted that he thought that it was Wang who stole the shift change schedule for the villains, because the Wang family was in cahoots with the criminals. The main character said that he knew everything, and he even knew that his opponent's uncle killed the witness, and then added that he was giving his classmate a chance to confess, otherwise he himself would report everything to the association's inspection department. Wang, in turn, did not even deny the teenager's accusations, and even praised Luan for being smart enough. And later, Tianhao even admitted that it was indeed he who suggested to his father the idea of stealing the schedule. It turned out that last year, Van found the key to the training section and kept it for himself, initially without even thinking that it would be useful. It turns out that for the sake of Spar, Tianhao endangered his own classmates, and he was not even ashamed of it, because he considers everyone just a pile of garbage. Vaughn also believed that this was quite justified, because in the future he would become a psionicist. So, thanks to him, the lives of others would be better. And Luan's classmate tells everything so boldly only because he plans to beat him so badly that the teenager will remain disabled for the rest of his days. And then he will also put a key in the boy's pocket to make him a villain. Lin responded to this that his opponent was such a vile type that he didn't even want to bite him. So instead of biting, he called on his strongest ability. So the classmates faced a very dangerous battle, deciding to use all their abilities to the maximum. Luan was so fast that Wang couldn't keep up with his speed, wondering how his opponent could do it. And while Lin was talking about how the association was rotten because of people like his classmate, Tianhao himself didn't understand where someone like Lin got such speed. As a result, while Van was at a loss, his classmate was able to strike him, saying that this was to him for all his actions. Although the main character was able to inflict many blows on his opponent, and he, in turn, had not yet responded to them, Van still considered himself the strongest. Luan, meanwhile, struck again, shouting that this was his way of taking revenge for his schoolmates who had died because of his opponent's actions. This blow was so strong that he could no longer move his leg because his spine was broken. And then Lin told his classmate that he had a broken spine, so now it is unknown whether he will ever be able to get back on his feet, and certainly now he will not be able to go into psionics. Wang began shouting that he would tell everything to his father and uncle, so that they would kill Luan and his entire family. And then the main character admitted that the Wang family now cannot escape punishment, because the teenager wrote down the entire story of his opponent, so now he has evidence. The guy sent this recording to Lily, because she said that if you find evidence, you can open a case on the tiger. And while Lin was fighting with Tianhao, his friend at that time was also not idle, having defeated 2 accomplices of their main enemy. 2 weeks later, Lily informed the main character that the end had come for the Wang family, because thanks to the evidence, she was able to start an investigation, and it turned out that this family was in cahoots with the attackers. Luan's classmate will never be able to walk again, and he will also be sent to a juvenile detention center. But the Thunder Tiger has no direct connection with the fraud, so he could not be attracted. But killing a witness means nothing, because he was an attacker, so it does not go beyond the scope of his official duties. But the guy shouldn't worry about the tiger, because since the man's family was convicted of crimes, he won't be able to do anything against the student. After a telephone conversation with Luan, Lily approached her teacher, who said that Lin was an interesting guy, but in the girl's opinion, he was clearly not eager to join the association. Then the teacher told Lily not to rush into her opinion about the guy because he needs to be given time. Meanwhile, the guy had a state exam, the first stage of which is to take blood tests for the presence of psionic energy. All the classmates told the main character that he would definitely not be able to pass the test stage. But it turned out that only Lin Lual and Lu Jihao from the class passed it, which no one expected. Those who passed this stage were asked to go to the Western basketball court, so the heroes went there. There, the heroes met 3 more students who had passed the first stage, which surprised Lu, because usually 2 people passed from their school, but now 5 people had passed. One of those who passed the first stage was Chen Daoji, who showed himself in school because he had limitless potential. Also, this stage was passed by Ruin Liuxi, who was the best in all subjects, attends all courses at school, and she is very smart. And the third one who also passed was Lin Si, who is an inventor and loves to understand technology. The students did not understand why they had gathered everyone when none of the teachers came to them. And then they heard some noise. Then they noticed the cat, so they decided that it was from him that the noise came. However, then the teenagers saw a man who asked them if they had passed the qualification. The students were surprised by such an unexpected appearance of a man, because they were waiting for teachers who would explain everything to them. Afterwards, the stranger added that the embryos should be pulled out at the beginning of growth and then shouted for Lala to go. It turned out that that cat was not an ordinary animal, because it was the same Lala to whom the man gave the order. The students immediately realized that this was not an ordinary cat, but a spiritual beast that they would have to fight. The main character did not understand why the psionicist was attacking them, so he grabbed the phone to call someone. But the man, as soon as he saw the phone in the teenager's hands, said that there was no need to call the police. And then the stranger himself also entered the battle, calling upon himself a weapon. He was ready to fight. The man used an ability called a rounded stroke on Luan, and then the boy decided to use his strength, but he did not succeed because there were not enough points since the enemy's life force exceeded his own. Lin Luan realized that the strength of the one who attacked them was on the same level as the Thunder Tiger, so it would be difficult to defeat him. After this, the student shouted to his friend to briefly distract the attacker, and he agreed to help his friend. Then, Jiahao told the others to scatter in different directions and try to call the police. Hearing the teenager's plan, the man replied that calling the police was against the rules, so he would not allow them to do it. As soon as the stranger said this, at that very moment he knocked the phones out of the hands of those who tried to call. While the others were fighting for their phones, the girl was trying to escape from the cat, which was ready to attack anyone. But the catch up with Lucy because she was saved by the main character, who quickly got his bearings and pushed the cat away. And although the man appreciated the teenager's speed, he is still sure that the student is not able to cope with Lala alone. Meanwhile, the cat had already switched all its attention to the main character, forgetting about the girl that she was pursuing. Luan understands that Lala is as fast as he is, and he only has the ability to run away but not to attack. So if they catch up with him, then the guy is screwed. The student then decided that the only way to defeat the cat was to take control of it by waiting for the right moment. So he allowed Lala to get as close to him as possible. A stranger saw this and started shouting for the guy to dodge, and the cat stopped because it was a dangerous moment. And when Lala approached the distance the guy needed, he used his ability to capture, spending almost all his points on it. But Lin accepted that victory was more important than accumulated points, so he's still bitter, spending 1,000 of his points. The man watching this did not understand what was happening and what the student was doing. Lala's powers included perception, flexibility, playfulness, shadow walking, sharp claws, and Buddha image. Having chosen one of the cat's talents, the guy began to wait for the submission to work in order to finally calm Lala down. But instead of submitting, the cat turned into a large, unknown beast that was ready to continue the battle. Seeing that everything was getting out of control, the stranger ordered Lala to stop, and she again became a calm, sweet cat. Afterwards, the man told the guys to calm down too, puzzling everyone he forced to fight. The stranger explained that he only wanted to test and evaluate the students' abilities, and then apologized for scaring them so much. It turned out that this man's name was Gu Yunqiao, and he was the teacher for the guys with whom his cat fought. All the students, except the main character, were crazy about this news, because Yunqiao was the coolest psionicist in their school, because he has the 5th level and is part of the preliminary investigation department of the association. According to the description from Luan's friend, their teacher was a terror for villains, because he has countless solved cases, and he is also handsome and cunning. The man's spiritual energy takes the form of 10 meters. In his right hand he has a brush, and in his left is the Book of Life and Death. The students were delighted, calling their teacher Wonderful Panguan and talking about how lucky they were. But the psionicist said that the children should simply call him their mentor, and that would be enough. And then the man noted that 5 students had passed this year, and before there had never been such a large number, so the director called the hero to teach. Then the teacher added that in half a month the second stage of the exam would take place, so they should have time to prepare well for it. Meanwhile, the cat did not leave Luan's side, and then the mentor noticed how much Lala liked the boy. Afterwards, Yunqiao suggested that the children go to a special class for training psionics to discuss the second stage of the exam in more detail. The teacher told the students that supernatural power has several gradations, and there are 7 levels in total, including absorbing, cyclical, manifesting, transforming, taking shape, chaotic, and spiritual enlightenment. And then Lu noticed that their mentor was already level 5, even though he was only 25 years old. And such people in the association could be counted on one hand. Yunqiao explained that in fact it is not worth drawing conclusions about a person's strength based on his level, because the level rather depends on luck. As an example, the mentor took the Thunder Tiger, whose trump card is that it can collect energy in its hand, so he created a technique called the Thunder Fist, and we can say that its level is somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd. But since Wang has perfected his technique to the maximum, he is able to break through a mountain, so if you compare him with Yunqiao, the tiger will most likely win. So the association decided to recognize that the tiger's strength is comparable to the 5th. Therefore, you should not focus only on the level, but it is better to find your own style in using energy, and then create your own personal technique and become the best in what you know. But it was too early to talk about this, because now the student's task is to concentrate on absorption and cyclicality. Absorption means that one must absorb supernatural power, and the human body absorbs this power gradually. Constant training will help students increase the amount of force they absorb, and after taking a medicine that contains 5% strength, teenagers will need a day to absorb it. Luan then asked if the medicine was practically the same as spar. And then the teacher said that the concentration of force in spar exceeds 80%, so it is so dangerous that you can die. The main character was surprised by this information, and then decided that it was thanks to the system that the spar did not have a detrimental effect on him. Next comes the second level, called cyclicality, which means that after absorption, the force begins to circulate in the body, strengthening it, allowing a person to exceed his physical capabilities. In theory, you can strengthen all parts of the body, but most people concentrate on strengthening certain ones in order to achieve results faster. During this fortnight, students will have to take a lot of medications, but they should not be afraid, because the school and the mentor will take care of all the costs, so teenagers just need to take advantage of the opportunity. And once the guys have figured out the theory, it's time to move on to practice. The teenagers began to train a lot, and after they had used up all their strength and drank the medicine, the students practiced even more, and then more, and more, and more. The teacher told the children that if they did not have time to get to the top of the mountain, which was only 10 kilometers away, they would do a long plank. Although everyone no longer had any strength, the main character and his friends suddenly began to compete to see who was faster, which helped them move on. Thus, the friends reached the top of the mountain together, continuing to argue about who was stronger. Yahello then noted that his friend's progress was very noticeable, even though he said that he did not want to take the exam, but now he is trying so hard. And Lin explained to him that he was trying to become stronger, and not for the sake of the exam, because the guy hadn't even decided yet whether he wanted to take it at all. After all, if he is going to take the exam, he will definitely fall under the control of the association. But the guy doesn't want that, because the hero had already told those who were from the association, and practically no one aroused his trust. While the guys were talking, the rest of the students also gradually reached the top. However, they were 3 minutes late, so now they have to stand in the plank for an hour. And so that Hao and Luan would not just watch their comrades suffer, they were told to keep the others company. The friends first began to swear that they were forced to stand in the plank, even though they managed to run. And after that, Lin asked the teacher if the association was a good place. Then the mentor replied that although the association is not ideal, isn't that why you should try to join it in order to make this place better? The teacher himself joined the association when he was 17 years old, and he did this in order to make the association an even brighter place. Although the psionicist thought that his speech sounded naive, it greatly inspired the guys who wanted to become the same as their mentor. So all 15 days passed, and then came the second stage of the exam, for which the students were vigorously preparing. Having gathered their strength, the teenagers went to the second round of the supernatural power exam. At this stage, many children from different schools gathered, and this was only a fifth of all people because there are 4 more collection points for the exam. Because of this, teenagers began to doubt whether they could compete with so many people. The Unified Supernatural Strength Exam is the main test of skill in which all competitors will undergo 5 types of competitions, including shooting, strength, assault, sensory, and running, each of which can achieve a maximum score of 100 points, and the top 1,200 competitors will advance to the final third round. Until the competition began, all the guys gathered in a self-service cafe, where they shared their experiences with each other. And while everyone was worried, Lin Luan ate calmly, because the food was free and delicious. Then Hao decided that his friend was right, and told everyone that they needed to eat well to have strength. And then 3 people entered the cafe, one of whom ridiculed Luan for seeming to be always hungry, and Lin, in turn, immediately received 10 points for hostility from Fu Guangkun. The teenager did not understand why they immediately disliked him so much if he did nothing. It turned out that this guy's father is on the State Development and Reform Committee, and he is the boss of Hao's father. Fu Guangkun told the teenagers that it was as if they had come for a free meal and not for an exam, and then added that he did not want to offend anyone, but simply wanted to share his experience. Speaking so that the entire cafe could hear him, Guangkun began to talk about how this round would not be so easy, because last year some of the contestants broke their arms due to improper use of force. Everyone in the cafe started talking about how Guangkun liked to bully other teenagers, so it was a pity for the 5 kids he scared to death. But this guy failed to intimidate the main character, because he saw the strength of his opponent. Knowing that he could use his ability on him, the student offered to measure their strength when the exam began. Lin decided to make an agreement in which, if he wins, then his opponent in front of the whole school will wish good luck to Luan's team. And if on the contrary, then the main character will quit his studies after the exam and will never return to it. Hao thought that his friend was crazy because Guankul was considered the strongest student in his school, and this agreement was too risky. The guy ridiculed Luan for being so self-confident that he even dared to challenge him. Guankun was very popular, and when he was called to a shooting competition, the other participants began to whisper about how good the guy was in each of the competitions. The teenager's total number of shooting points was 87, which was a very good result. But the guy didn't show his joy, saying that today's result was acceptable to him. And while this popular young man was thinking that the guy who challenged him had some kind of trump card in his head, he, in turn, received 42 points in the shooting and considered that he was quite good. Others were very worried about the main character because of his argument, and he showed such a bad result. The participants were then asked to prepare for the strength test competition that was next. Contestant number 068, Fu Guangkun, received a final strength score of 89. And the number 143 participant, Lin Luan, received only 65 points, which was inferior to his opponent's points. Therefore, the opponent of the protagonist realized that he was in vain to worry about Luan, because he turned out to be too weak. Meanwhile, Lin calmly continued to eat, as if nothing had happened, although he understood that if he lost, he would have to quit his studies. Then his friend began to swear at the student, because how could it be that the boy was 69 points behind, but still found time to eat? Luan reassured everyone that there was no need to lose enthusiasm yet, because they could still show others how strong they were. The next test was a sensory test, in which all participants had to go to their rooms, in which there were 300 rats, and this task required them to find one rat in which Spar was hidden. And while Lin was thinking that it was his turn to show himself, his opponent at the same time decided to deal with everything as quickly as possible, because he considered rats an abomination. And while the participants in the sensory test were asked to go to their rooms, two figures appeared in the background. It turned out that these were not just strangers, but Lily and her mentor, the head of the supervision department, Yang Mu. Lily pointed out to the man the teenager she was talking about earlier, and then asked the teacher if the student would be able to pass this dangerous round. And then two people met Zhao Chenlin, who is the deputy head of the public security department. And it was with her that the main character recently crossed paths. Zhao asked Lily and her boss about what they were doing here, to which she received a response, explaining her presence by saying that cases of murders had become more frequent lately, so she was looking around and giving everyone advice. Then a noise was heard on their site, and it turned out that it was all because someone passed the test very quickly. At that moment, Guangkun was just coming out, so he decided that all these ovations were in his honor. And the guy had already begun to thank the crowd flying towards him, but the people in turn pushed him away, rushing to someone else. Then the self-confident teenager realized that all these enthusiastic cries were not in his honor, which means that someone completed the task faster. It turned out that all attention was directed towards Luan, because he found the spar in 10 seconds, but his opponent took 2 minutes to do it. The main character explained this result by the fact that as soon as the door opened, the rat with the spar immediately ran out to his leg, and he, in turn, immediately caught it. But it doesn't matter how, because Luan won in any case and received 100 points for it, starting to catch up with his opponent. And while Lin was happy about his victory, he didn't even notice that he was approaching the woman he met on the first day of receiving his power. He was so busy thinking about the fact that there were 2 more tests left, which meant that there were still chances, that he didn't even pay any attention to the stranger who called out to him. And then the girl decided that she had simply made a mistake, since she did not receive any reaction. But it turned out that Luan recognized her, but simply did not show any sign. The next test for the participants was a 400-meter race, and it so happened that the main character ended up in the same group with his opponent. Fu Guang was sure that the victory would go to him, but then Lin told him that at school he was always first in the races. This turned out to be the case this time too, because Luan ran the fastest and received 100 points for this test, but his opponent received 75 for it. But the protagonist's opponent did not want to believe in his defeat, so he began to shout that the race does not solve anything, but the next test will definitely be his. And the last test was an assault, in which participants had to kill as many bats as possible within 5 minutes. And then Fu Guang said that this test was definitely his, because not only was he strong, but Lin was still 22 points behind him. Luan understood that even if he killed one mouse after another, he would not have time to catch the required number in 5 minutes, and so he began to think if there were any other ways to win. And then the teenager remembered the words of his teacher about how to activate his ability, releasing his spiritual energy outward. Lin actually began to release his spiritual energy, thinking that bats were excellent at detecting ultrasonic vibrations. Fu Huang noticed that the bats flew in the same direction, so he followed where exactly the animals were moving. And then he realized that they were all flying towards Luan, surprised that the hero decided to risk his life for the sake of victory, because the bats could easily kill the student. The protagonist's rival tried to save him by shouting for him to quickly hide his spiritual power because there were too many bats, so it would be difficult to defeat them all. Meanwhile, Lin waited until there were enough bats to activate his power. And as soon as the number of mice became very large, the teenager used his power on them all, killing all the mice that surrounded him with a couple of movements. It turned out that Luan killed a record number of mice and surpassed all the people examined before him from all over China. Thus, for the assault, the main character received 99 points, having killed 435 mice in 5 minutes, and his total points were 406. And his opponent received 69 for the assault, and the total number of points was 398. This means that Lin won the argument, and his opponent is obliged to fulfill his part of the deal, which included supporting the Luan school. The rest of the students from the protagonist's school were in another group, and for them the competition would begin in the afternoon. So Lin tried his best to support the guys. As a result, Liu Jiahao received 404 points in total after all competitions. Chen Daoji received a total of 341 points, which was a good result. Participant Lin Se received 334 points, falling slightly short of his friend. Ruan Liuxi received a total of 352 points. And since all 5 candidates from the main character's school showed such a good result, they all ultimately qualified for the final round. The teenagers were happy that they showed such an excellent result, so they went to celebrate with their teacher. The mentor told the students that the final selection was in 3 days, so they should try not to worry, believe in themselves, and take a good rest. Being in a good mood, Jiahao saw that he was receiving a call, so he decided to leave for a while to talk on the phone. The teenager's dad called, and as soon as the boy answered the call, the father told him something that immediately changed the student's mood. According to the news, cases of attacks by intruders in the eastern region have become more frequent recently, so they asked all citizens to be more vigilant. The heroes, meanwhile, checked into a hotel for participants in the final qualifying exam for psionics in the eastern region, because the point of the final test will be a park in the suburbs where the main character and his comrades live. The students were glad that the competition was taking place in their hometown, so they decided that they should try their best. And then the teenagers' conversation was interrupted by Lin, who asked the others if they had seen Hao. Then, everyone decided that the boy was late at home, where he had previously gone on business. However, the main character was still worried because his friend was not answering the phone, but then he decided that he would wait a little longer. Luan's patience ran out soon enough, so he hurried to find his comrade because he couldn't just disappear the day before the final exam, which was very important to him. The teenager ran to Hao's house and noticed that there were no lights on anywhere, which was very puzzling, because something could have happened. Then Lin went into the house and, walking around, the teenager found the body of the manager in the wine cellar, which was in terrible condition. And then the boy immediately called his mentor to break the news that Hao and his family were missing. The student also added that he found a manager who was dead and looked like a deceased mummy. Then the mentor ordered the teenager to urgently leave this place, and in the meantime the man himself would send someone to the house, because he himself was unable to come. But the main character did not want to leave, so he decided to wait for the psionicist on the spot. And then he heard some noise, deciding that they had arrived so quickly from the association. But it turned out to be an unknown man who was talking on the phone about how he would deal with the corpse, and then added that he hated covering other people's tracks. With a dissatisfied look, the man grabbed the corpse by the head with one hand, as if it weighed nothing. After this, the man told the body to disappear and burned it using samadhi fire. The stranger scattered the remaining ashes into the wind, reporting over the phone that everything had been settled, and a handful of ashes would not pass as evidence, and then said that he would be there soon, driving somewhere by car. The main character did not want to leave his friend in trouble, so he decided to chase the car to find out where the man went. The car was driving quite fast, but Luan did not lag behind it, wanting to find his comrade, who was now in danger. And this stranger led him to a building that Lin immediately recognized, because it was the trading building of Hao's father. It turned out that there were many people in this place who began to talk about the fact that the head of the red puppets had returned. The first thing the stranger was met by was the attacker Lu Qin, who said that the man had worked hard. And then the attackers Zhao Shuyu and Zhao Shudong approached the unknown man, who made it clear to the man that he had been messing around with such an ordinary businessman for a long time. Liu Jiahao's father, Liu Tianming, was also in this place, and he told the criminals to let his son go, and then he would do anything. And then Liu Qin told him not to worry, because if he cooperates, no one will get hurt. And then he promised that they would sort everything out by tomorrow lunch. As a result, the attackers did not know where the key to the cage was, and then Shuyu could not stand it and simply broke it. However, only the father was taken from the cage, and the son was forced to continue to sit quietly in it. One of the criminals said that he and his father would go and sort out some issues, return for dinner, and the rest should behave quietly so that the association's psionics would not come. Then Shudong said that she also wanted to go, but she was still left to look after the hostage. Shudong decided that she was in charge now, so she told the others to do what she wanted, and then ordered them to bring a boy with slicked back hair. The girl was immediately obeyed, throwing a hostage at her feet, whom she must keep an eye on. After this, Shudong told the guy that his father knew that they were both already dead, but her sister said that Tianming would agree to cooperate to save her son's life. And because of such a heroic act, the girl was so moved that she told the hero that he could run like a stray dog to call the police, because this was his last chance to escape. And then Shudong added that if her people did catch the teenager, he would be in big trouble. Then the teenager ran, not to save himself but to save his father. But the guy didn't manage to run far because they pushed him, catching up with him because he fell. The boy asked to be released because he wanted to save his father, but one of the villains said that it was not interesting, intending to beat the teenager. But the attacker did not have time to do this because Luan came running to his friend's aid, cutting off the man's leg, which he swung at the defenseless student. At this moment, Jiahao realized that now everything is not so bad, because at the moment he is no longer alone, but with a faithful comrade. Lin shouted to the villain that they should not dare touch his friend, because then they would be in trouble. Then Jiahao asked what Luan was doing in this place, and the teenager told him the whole situation and how he ended up here. And instead of gratitude, the main character heard cries that he would rather call the police than risk his life. And while the friends were arguing, Shudong noticed that Luan's spiritual energy was fluctuating, which means that his power awakened not so long ago, so they definitely wouldn't be able to escape. And Jiahao agreed with her, because criminals are many times stronger than teenagers, so Luan should not have come. The main character realized that they really couldn't win just like that, and so he unexpectedly hit his friend so hard that he lost consciousness. The attackers were very surprised by this outcome, because their rivals must rarely take their allies out of the game. The guy explained this action by saying that since they couldn't win in an ordinary fight, they needed to resort to an unusual method, because the teenager was ready for trouble and had accumulated a large number of points to use his strength. And when the student was attacked by one of the criminals, the teenager quickly used the ability of submission, waiting for the result. After this, the boy told the attackers to attack all at once, thinking of subjugating as many people as possible. Laughing with such self-confidence of the boy, the criminals rushed to him in a crowd, not noticing how he began to bite them all, in order to then take over their minds. Shuden then began to worry that the boy would be killed too quickly, and she wouldn't even have time to have fun. But then the girl noticed that everyone suddenly stopped fighting, but simply stopped, like dolls. The main character was happy because he had enough points to use the power of submission on everyone. Using his ability, the guy saw that this girl was the strongest among the others, because to use the ability on her, it was necessary to spend 1,000 points. But fortunately for the student, he had 3,000 points, so he had enough to zombify Shudong. Meanwhile, the girl thought that the other attackers had stopped to allow her to finish off the teenager herself. Luan, meanwhile, ordered all his subordinates to attack the unsuspecting attacker together. Shuden did not understand what those who were supposed to obey her were doing, because they had completely stopped following her orders. When the girl realized that this was not a joke, and the others were really trying to harm her, she immediately turned into a monster, activating her power. And then the attacker shouted to the guy that since he had done something with her henchman, he should now say goodbye to his head. But she was unable to attack because the teenager was protected by one of the villains controlled by Lin. Everyone controlled by the student also activated their abilities and then attacked all together, making it much more difficult for Shudong to fight off everyone. Luan, meanwhile, was thinking that this was the first time he had encountered such a powerful psionicist, and in the future, villains like this girl would appear on the boy's path more and more often. The teenager understood that when he accumulated enough points to activate the capture, then he would be able to fight all the villains, but for now, he needed to become stronger. After these thoughts, the boy ordered his slaves to release Shudong in order to fight her himself. The girl first asked why everyone obeys the guy and not her, and then clarified how the teenager was going to defeat her. And then Lin threw the ball, and Shuden could not resist the temptation and ran after it. Because of this, the attacker became even more angry because she wanted the student to fight with her seriously. And then he asked her why she decided that he was not serious. After all, while the girl was distracted, Lin tried to suddenly attack her, but the villainess was able to dodge. The fight continued in the same vein, where two opponents try to hit each other, but always managed to dodge. Shudong understood that at this rate she would waste all her spiritual power if she continued to remain in animal form. Then the attacker remembered how her sister taught her a technique with which she could give shape to her energy. The criminal decided to do as her sister taught her to create a spiritual body. Thanks to the fact that Shudong listened carefully to everything, in the end, she was able to create shadow cats. But the girl understood that she could only hold out for no more than 15 seconds. Then the villainess immediately ordered her cats named Grape, Strelka, and Griffin to attack the teenager. It turned out that these clots of energy that Shudong created would explode when ordered, and so she ordered them to surround Luan so that he could not escape. The girl's plan worked, because the shadow cats were able to quickly surround the hero and explode. So Shudong decided that she had already won this fight. But it turned out that Lin remained virtually unharmed after the explosion, so he struck the criminal again. And this time, Shudong did not have time to dodge because she was too surprised by how Luan withstood her attack. The girl did not understand how it happened that the guy remained unharmed after the bombs, because she definitely saw that they hit the teenager. Then, Lin explained to the attacker that he simply managed to copy the ability to harden the integument, which one of the girl's accomplices had, so this power protected him. And then the student admitted that he copied more than 20 skills and improved some of them with the help of points. And while Shuden was trying to understand what the boy was talking about, he himself added that his rival had already used up all her spiritual energy, so Luan was victorious in this battle. While the guy was approaching the attacker, she remembered the words of her sister, who said that girls would no longer tolerate offenders, but would become the strongest psionics. Then the criminal began to cry that Lin should not kill her, because then her sister would feel bad. The teenager reassured the girl because he didn't want to kill her, but simply decided to teach her a lesson. And in the meantime, he copied her power called the Shadow Cat. And in the end, the guy had only 32 points left. Shudong was very grateful to Luan for not killing her. Having dealt with the girl, the student ordered all his subordinates to go in search of the villains who had left. And in the meantime, Jiahao woke up. The protagonist's friend did not know what was happening, so he began to fight with those who were currently on their side. After that, the guy found Luan and asked what was going on here, and then thought that he and his friend had simply been captured. Lin told his comrade that he did not remember anything because he was hit by the villains. And then Jiahao decided to act according to the previous plan to defeat all the enemies. And then Luan told his friend that there was no longer any need to fight, because the people around them had ceased to be villains. The student did not want to reveal his strength, so he began to come up with a reason why their enemies became good, on the fly, saying that they just had a conversation, and after that the villains admitted their mistakes and wanted to correct themselves. In confirmation of the young man's words, his subordinates began to shout that they realized their guilt and wanted to change. According to Luan, the whole point is that he is simply a great speaker, and therefore was able to convince all the criminals. And in the end, Jiahao decided that there was no time to deal with this, because he needed to quickly find the 3 criminals who took his father somewhere. Lin warned that he had already told the teacher everything, but if help did not arrive in time, he would have to fight the 3 strong attackers himself. No one knew where the cave in which the criminals hid led, because even the end was not visible. And then Jiahao remembered about the exam that was about to start, so the guy apologized to his friend for the fact that they wouldn't make it in time. But Luan was not as offended as his comrade, because Jiahao had been preparing for him for several years, and Lin did not really want to be a psionicist. Meanwhile, the exam was about to begin, and all the examinees were already ready. Then Luan and Jiahao's comrades began to worry that the guys were still missing, because in this case, they might be disqualified as soon as the gates closed. The main character's rival from the previous stage also took the exam, who was dissatisfied with the fact that those 2 did not show up, and the guy was going to take revenge on them. The head of the Eastern District Administration, Wang Zhe, has already announced that there are only 10 minutes left before the start of the competition, so everyone is asked to refamiliarize themselves with the rules before the exam begins. Within 4 hours, all participants will need to get to the tower, which is located in the center of the park where everyone was located. This competition would be observed by the Surveillance Department, the Security Department, and the Presidium. And when they were all ready, the final test began. The gates began to open, and all the examinees were already preparing for what they were about to go through. But the main character and his friend never showed up, which made their comrades worry. The absence of the young men was noticed not only by their acquaintances, but also by Lily and her boss, who tried to find the teenagers in the crowd, but to no avail. And for the students, this was not the time to think about the exam, because first of all, now they need to hurry up and save Jiahao's father. Lin realized that he would need glasses for the battle, so he ordered the two men to do some mischief somewhere so that they would be hated. And the main character told the rest that they need to speed up the pace, but first they need to develop a plan of action. And then they were interrupted by a man whom Luan had already seen at his friend's house when he noticed the tracks. The girl also recognized the intruder, saying that his name was Qikui, and then added that he should let everyone through because she wanted to see her sister. Then the criminal said that Shudong was troublesome, and then added that when she gets into trouble for this, she shouldn't blame him. Qikui did not suspect any trick, and then the girl asked him where they were going, to which he replied that they were in search of treasure. Then Lin asked his friend why they captured his father, and he explained that it was all because the man was developing land ownership, so he was familiar with the area, and the villain needed a guide to find spiritual stones. But the guys knew that there was little spar in their city, so they did not understand why the criminals decided to look for something here. And then Luan realized that the villains were heading to the park, because there were now a lot of miraculous medicines that had been prepared for the examinees. Meanwhile, the exam was strictly controlled, and everyone was watching that only 10 minutes had passed, and 2 had already passed the first obstacles, which means that this year the participants are very strong. Jiahao began to doubt his friend's words because the exam has serious security system, so going there for the sake of spar is like signing your own death warrant. In addition, this year their mentors group is responsible for safety, so it will be almost impossible to achieve results. And while the guys were talking about their teacher, unknown people in hoods came to him. These strangers turned out to be criminals who began to attack the group in charge of security. The psionics did not have time to react, so the tower, to which all the participants were rushing, was damaged by the explosion of the attackers. The hooded strangers did not stop at one department and went through the rest, causing harm to people in the building. The stranger was asked where Commander Gu was, and he replied that the commander and his men were all already defeated. Then guards from the gathering place of the district security subdivision tried to contact the people in the tower. The villain heard this and told the others to respond to the guards and inform them that everything was under control, so there was no need to worry. And then, the district chief said that everything was in order and nothing unusual, so everyone should return to their positions. The attacker noted that the boss values his personality much more than the lives of those participating in the test. Lily and her mentor realized that something was wrong, so the girl used her power of invisibility and disappeared from the criminals unnoticed. Meanwhile, the district chief asked the villains who they were and what they were going to do. And then the criminal asked if anyone remembered the incident when the city of Chao was destroyed 8 years ago, and in response to this he received only silence. Then the villain decided to remind everyone. Before the incident, the association of supernatural power existed only in the eastern region, and not as now, scattering its branches around the world. And then the city of Chao, the ghetto of the eastern region, was captured and then destroyed by the group Thick Mist. 1,375 residents died in that event. And since the association was originally an unofficial organization, it was not able to arrive at the scene in time. The man was promoted from a management pawn to the chief of the eastern region thanks to the fact that his fiery speech ignited a fire in the hearts of the people, which led to the official recognition of the association, which soon turned into an industrial giant. However, the attacker doubted that everything in this story was clear. After this, the narrator was informed that Lu Qin had arrived, so the man interrupted his reasoning about the story he was telling. The commander gave the order for the scammers to begin, and they replied that they understood everything and would act harmoniously. Then Jiahao's father asked the villains if they could finally let him and his son go, because he did as they wanted and led them right under Shigong Park. At that moment, the third one reached the 2 criminals, who brought with him a crowd controlled by Luan, as well as himself and his friend. Jiahao was ready to rush to his father, but his comrades stopped him, because it was too early to reveal their plan. Meanwhile, Shuyu scolded her sister because she was given an order, which she disobeyed. But at that moment, Lu said that it was good that they had come. Otherwise, he would have had to go a long way to replenish his energy reserves. And he suddenly grabbed one of Luan's slaves, and no one had time to do anything, because everything happened too unexpectedly. And then the man who was captured began to quickly dry out, turning into a mummy. Qin, meanwhile, threw the body away, and then said that it would not be enough for him, and he was still hungry. The fraudster began to look around in search of a new victim, and then he turned his attention to Jiahao's father, starting to stretch his hand towards him. And at that moment, Jiahao himself could not resist and struck the attacker, saving his father. The man was very surprised to see his son here, and he, in turn, apologized for helping only now. While his friend was busy with dialogue, Lin ordered all his puppets not to wait, but to attack their opponents together. And at that moment, when the fight was just beginning, Luan ordered his friend and his father to quickly leave here, because at the moment it was possible. But, as it turned out, Lu Qin was not upset by the fact that their loved ones rebelled. The criminal simply began to absorb the energy of everyone who tried to fight him. Shuden also wanted to get involved in a fight, but her sister did not let her, not understanding what was happening to the girl. Luan realized that the scammers were targeting the test-takers' meeting place, so he needed to immediately inform the people in the central tower. The villains in the tower, meanwhile, were told to take all the psionic reagent they needed, but the leader of the criminals replied that they did not need the reagent at all, but all the examinees who were now in the park. And then all the teenagers who were taking the exam saw a large number of rats and bats approaching them. The children were very surprised by this turn of events, because they were not warned that animals from previous stages would also be in the finals. There were so many mice and rats that the students had no idea how to fight them off. It turned out that the animal attack was the fault of the primordial chaos beast spirit, and because of this, everyone involved was surrounded. Therefore, because of the rats and mice, the teenagers were forced to rush to the tower as quickly as possible to escape. Lily, meanwhile, tried to call at least someone who could help her save her teacher and the others by stopping the attackers. The protagonist's comrades were also running away from the animals, and then the girl tripped over a stone and fell, so that the mice and rats began to approach her. But the animals failed to catch up with the heroine, because Fu Guangkun came to her aid, who killed all the creatures that tried to attack the student. And then the 4 examinees were left to be torn apart by the animals with which they were surrounded. The former rival shouted to the others to try to escape if they did not want to die. And then a shadow cat appeared in the distance, and then a voice began to be heard, telling Grape to go forward. The cat approached the students and exploded with bright colors, scaring everyone around. It turned out that this cat was called by Lin Luan to save his comrades from animals. Then the others began to question the main character, but he interrupted them, saying that now was not the time for chatter, because at the moment he needed to run. After this, Luan ordered everyone to escape through the underground passage, which the attackers had previously used, but now they are not there. And then Guangkun asked what to do with the exam. Then the student explained to his opponent that the exam was not the most important thing to think about right now. At the same time, one of the examinees said that these were just mice and rats, so they would have to cope with them. But this guy had to fight not only with animals, but also with an attacker who used a technique called fire taste on the boy. The villain said that in a group there will always be 1 or 2 people, like this student, who take the initiative to make noise and cause trouble for others. And the way out of such a situation is very simple, because you just need to eliminate the initiators, and then the rest will immediately rush into chaos. Everyone really immediately began to panic, and the man shouted after them that the students would not run away from him. Meanwhile, the tower guards stood motionless without leaving their places, as they had been ordered by their superior. Meanwhile, Lily tried to explain to the men that they had an emergency, because the tower had been captured by attackers. The villain's plan worked, and all the examinees ran to the tower in the hope of salvation, which they ultimately did not receive. Then, one of the attackers reported to his commander that all the students were assembled. The leader replied that he understood everything, and then added that after 8 years he would finally be able to make the case public. After this, the man turned to the administrative workers with the words that they should know the other side of the fall of the city of Chao. The attackers said that at that time the association deliberately arrived later in order to provoke the public and gain the desired status. The association's resulting power cost the lives of 1,375 Chao residents. The criminal said that he wanted to pull out the weed, meaning association, by the roots, and the examinees were chosen by him as revolutionaries. Then Lily's mentor thought about what this crazy guy wanted to do with the children. Lu Qin asked his commander if they could finally begin their plan. And then it seemed to all the students that some kind of earthquake had begun, because the earth began to disappear from under their feet. But it turned out that it was not an earthquake, but a large monster that crawled out of the ground. It was a worm called a crown gear, and it was so huge that it killed many students. Then the criminal asked the others if they were familiar with this type of worm, which required a lot of effort to fatten it up. This monster releases a mist-like strand that, when inhaled, produces a stupefying effect that, although it will not affect psionicists, will work for beginners. Then Lily's mentor began to swear at the criminal, asking if he realized what he was going to do to ordinary children. After this, the man added that the military unit already knew what was going on in the tower, so it was better for the villains to just leave and let the children go. But the attacker was not so simple, because he noticed that Lily had left, and he calmly let her go, because in any case, help would not be there in time. The criminal understood that by the time the rescue squad arrived, the villains would be able to do their job. After this, the worm was ordered to begin, and he began to do everything as the criminal had described earlier. The students inhaled this fog and did not understand what it was and what was happening to them. And then the criminal noticed that the monster had stopped, and it became unclear to him why this happened, because the worm had eaten enough of the reagent to give it a lot of strength. The students also began to notice that the fog had stopped appearing, and it also seemed as if the monster was in pain. And then the worm said that he couldn't do it anymore because it was so disgusting here. It turned out that even the criminals themselves did not know that this worm could talk, because they were very surprised by this fact. Then the worm began to scream that he wanted to get out, and then shouted something about a fierce claw. Half an hour ago, the main character and his comrades were running away from criminals and trying to get to the exit where they would be safe. Here the heroes thought about what would happen to the rest of the examinees, and this thought made Luan stop. After this, the guy said that he had a strong call of nature and ran away, promising to return. The others tried to call the teenager to stop, but to no avail. Then the friend of the boy who ran away said that the boy knew what he was doing, so he could go. The student understood that he currently had few points, so it would be difficult for him to defeat anyone, so he needed to quickly earn more. The teenager's subordinates did everything they could to make themselves hated, because they behaved horribly in public, telling movie endings and pretending to be exhibitionists. And then the young man began to feel waves of spiritual power, realizing that they were from reagents prepared by the Association for Examinees, so he decided to find a warehouse that should be somewhere nearby. Then the guy noticed a large worm that was crawling out of the ground, which the student definitely did not expect to see. The teenager did not understand where this disgusting worm came from in the park, because he had never seen anything like it before. But it seemed to the guy that this worm did not pose any threat and looked quite friendly. But that was not the case, because this monster suddenly opened its mouth, showing the boy that he clearly posed a threat. After this, the monster flew up, wanting to attack the young man, jumping on him. But the worm did not manage to eat the student, because he reacted in time and dodged. And while Lin was thinking that the worm obviously belonged to the villains and why it was so big, the monster itself disappeared somewhere at that time. And then it dawned on the teenager that the worm had not disappeared, but had gone underground. But the boy realized this too late, because the creature was already under him with its mouth open. As soon as the boy had time to think that he was finished, the monster's mouth slammed shut and he was eaten. So Luan ended up inside the worm, but he remained alive, because among the abilities he copied there was a defensive one, but he didn't know how long he could hold out like that. The student decided that he would gut him out using an ability called a ferocious claw. But then the boy decided that if this monster belonged to the criminals, then he could wait in the belly until the worm itself delivered Luan to the villains. Although the plan was good, the main character had to endure a place in which he was disgusted to be. Then the guy felt that a worm was crawling somewhere, and then he heard the voices of other guys. It was then that the boy decided that it was time to activate the fierce claw and kill the monster from the inside. Thus, the main character killed a monster that could harm a large number of children. Once Lin finally got out of the worm, he began to swear at what kind of war they had staged here, and then said what an abomination this worm was. The main criminal ordered the others to capture the guy who ruined all their plans. Lu Qin, meanwhile, ran to treat the worm, calling it by its name, Lady Hell. Shu Yu, meanwhile, turned into a beast, shouting that she would not allow some boy to interfere with them. However, the girl was interrupted by her sister, forcing her to stop to protect Luan. And since no one was going to catch the boy, it had to be done by a man who was not happy about it, because for him it was too steamy. The head of the attackers, meanwhile, asked how long it would take to completely heal the monster. Then Lu Qin replied that it would take him about 10 minutes, which did not please his boss at all. Because the main attacker understood that they hardly had these 10 minutes, because soon other psionics would come running to help the guys. And so, the man ordered his subordinates to try to delay the approaching warriors as long as possible in order to gain time. Lily's mentor, meanwhile, looked at Luan, thinking that he had noticed this young man a long time ago. Meanwhile, Lin saw the villain who was controlling the fire. And then the teenager decided that this attacker at the moment represented the greatest danger to him. And then someone called the guy's name, and this made Luan surprised because he did not understand whose voice it was. Then the man introduced himself as Lily's mentor, and then explained to the boy that his ability would help them communicate telepathically. The mentor told the guy that help would arrive in 15 minutes, but in the meantime, Lin would have to try to detain the intruders. The main character said that he will definitely cope with this task because a lot depends on it. The villain, meanwhile, could not keep up with Luan, thinking that the guy was running like a cheetah. The attacker then tried to attack the teenager with a wave of fire that was large enough to reach the boy. And although Lin managed to dodge, the man's flame flares up and goes out at his will, so it will be difficult for the student to escape from the fire that surrounded him. And then the young man began to say that he was still a complete beginner, an ordinary student, so the man needed to be easier with him. But the villain didn't really care about the guy's words, so he used an ability called Heat on him. However, the teenager didn't even have to dodge because he used a block and a protective field. Thanks to the abilities that Lin had copied earlier, he was now able to give at least some resistance to the attackers. But even with the use of two forces together, the young man could not resist the blow of the criminal. The boy understood that if his opponent hit him in all seriousness, he would not be able to withstand it, and Luan did not have enough points to bite. The guy avoided the blows as best he could because he understood that if something happened, it would be very painful for him. And then a cat named Strelka exploded behind the attacker, which turned out to be an unexpected move for him. And then the boss told the villain not to stay long, because the teenager was deliberately stalling for time. And while the man was dealing with the leader, Luan was able to disappear from view, which caused even more trouble for the criminal. It seemed to the attacker that the guy decided to hide upstairs, so he struck the trees. However, there was not a student there, but another shadow cat, from which the noise came. And while the man was distracted by the cat, Luan decided to stab him from behind while he had the opportunity. Finally, the young man made it clear to the attacker that he was going not only to stall for time, but also to defeat the criminal. But, unfortunately, the teenager's blow was not enough to defeat the villain, so the attacker then pushed the boy away from him. And then Lin heard the voice of his mentor, who said that it was too early to think about victory, because now it was much more important to gain time, and then victory would definitely remain with the heroes. And although the teenager understood this, he still wanted to defeat the villain, noticing that he needed less and less points to bite. The student realized that the number of points required for capture is determined by the enemy's vitality, and therefore it can decrease if the vitality drops. The young man understood that if he lowered the attacker's points a little more, then he would be able to use the power of capture on him. The mentor noticed the persistence of the hero, who could gain even more time than expected. And while Luan tried to stall for time, Lu Qin was able to completely cure the worm, which was already ready to continue. Shillili and other operatives were already rushing to help, however. They met someone on their way. It was a detachment of those who attacked the building. They blocked the path of our fighters. One of the hooded strangers, apparently the leader of the squad, told Lily that entry here was prohibited. Meanwhile, the examinees looked up and one of them shouted in panic that the worm had recovered. The guy controlling the worm laughed and said that it happened because he was inattentive. But this will not happen again because he will guard the worm, and in 5 minutes they will all be under his control. The old man heard this speech and lowered his eyes, realizing that they were late. Meanwhile, Luan continued to fight. He fell to the ground, burning from the previous attack. At this moment, Lu Qin raised his head to the sky and ordered the worm to begin its attack. However, nothing happened, and the worm began to make strange sounds similar to the sounds of pain. Lu Qin approached and saw a strange silhouette in his pet's stomach. He realized that there was someone there. Luan shouted that the time had come and ordered Griffin to explode. At that moment, the shadow kitten in the worm's body exploded and the monster's stomach scattered, forming a huge hole. Lu King was furious because he had just cured his pet. Yang Mu grinned as he watched this. The old man called the guy a genius, because Luan managed to leave an assistant in the worm back then. The red-haired guy could hardly stand on his feet, but he was glad that everything went exactly according to plan. Zhao Chenlin smiled as she watched the fight, because the guy was not bad after all. Meanwhile, the unknown leader of the attackers was furious that their plans were being thwarted. As the fight continued, Luan received more and more punches in the face from his opponent. The man smiled because he understood that he was winning the fight. He advised the kid to surrender because he was no match for him. And Luan stuck to his tactics. He looked at the system window in which it was written that 1100 points were needed to capture. And now he had 1104. The time had come. The hero abruptly stood up and thunderclaps appeared around him. Luan activated his shadow step at full power. At the same moment, he ran at the speed of sound towards the enemy, who was confident of his victory. However, it is unclear from where another attack, not typical of his opponent, was directed towards Luan. The hero managed to stop in time and dodge her. An unknown person in a green cloak appeared in the air. The ardent guy immediately recognized him and said that he would figure it out himself. However, the unknown person did not answer a word. He then looked towards Luan and said in a rage that he had no idea how much he had ruined their plans. Luan raised his head and asked the unknown person to stop. He asked teacher Gu Yunxiao to stop. At this moment, the unknown man's eyes opened wide. He did not expect such an answer. Luan continued. He said that he did not tell Hao and the others that the killer was their teacher, because right now it is very difficult for them, and they could not stand it if they heard this truth. The man's hands were shaking. He told the boy that he didn't understand what he was talking about, and he didn't know who this Gu Yunxiao was. Luan shouted that he himself didn't want to admit it, but all the threads led to this, no matter how much he didn't want to. Firstly, the teacher purposefully came to their school for half a month, although there were few of them there, which was too lenient for a person of his level, and all because it was near Vention that the decision was made to hold the exam. Afterwards, Lu Qin and other attackers kidnapped Hao's father, knowing exactly when he was not at work, and freely entered the exam site. This suggests that their accomplice was already there. Even when Luan discovered them, he first notified the teacher. But the night passed and reinforcements never arrived. The rats and mice that were part of the second round were brought under control, and they, very precisely in time, began to surround the examinees. And finally, the tower was captured, and the communication routes were blocked. And only one person could pull it all off with such ease. Only the commander of the security detachment, Gu Yunxiao, Luan's teacher, could do this. After listening to the story, the man smiled and replied that this was a very excellent chain of conclusions. But the guy was wrong. After all, Gu Yunxiao is dead. An unknown man personally strangled him with his own hands. Luan just looked pitifully at the man who was trying to hide the truth. The guy ordered Lala to show himself. At that moment, a cute black cat appeared from the chest of the hooded stranger. The cat jumped out and ran to Luan's feet, and the guy just watched it. There was no longer any point in hiding. The unknown person could not believe that he had been found out. He took off his hood and Gu Yunxiao appeared in front of the guy. He asked how long Luan had suspected him. Meanwhile, outside the exam site, a battle began. One of the support squad decided to use his hurricane ability. Powerful streams of wind hit the unknown people. Due to a strong gust of wind, their hoods overturned and Lily recognized them. This was the association's 6th investigative team, Gu Yunxiao's squad. Lily started screaming and asking what they were doing here. Had they gone crazy? But a girl from the 6th group shouted that the entire association must die for what happened to Chao. Meanwhile, Luan asked his teacher to stop before it was too late. His teacher replied that the guy did not know anything, and they were only here to bring justice. That day in Chao, each of them lost their relatives. At that moment, an unknown girl flashed through the mentor's memories. He began to concentrate his power and said that he had been training for 8 years to kill those responsible for what happened, who were blissful in impunity. And that is why today they must take revenge on the association. We are transported back in time to an old dilapidated barracks, where a female voice asked the children if their test results had arrived. Little Yun Xiao boasted that he had the highest score in all subjects except physical training. But even this could be improved with the help of a reagent, so the teacher told him. The children's mother was happy for her son and asked his sister how her results were. The girl puffed out her cheeks and replied that she had lost her certificate. The brother immediately shamed his sister by saying that her grades were terrible, so she lost her certificate, to which the sister replied that in any case, she remained his older sister for 2 whole minutes. The brother and sister were twins, and at that very moment they began to fight to find out who was older, but their mother calmed them down. A little later, the mother told Yunming that if her brother continues in the same spirit, then there is a high probability that he will be taken into psionics, and the only problem is his physical abilities, which he can improve with a reagent. But it is very expensive. Their father left them a long time ago, and their mother was afraid that she would not be able to cope. The girl smiled and replied that she would quit her studies because, anyway, her performance was low and her education was a waste of money. She would get a job and help her brother with admission to the School of Psionics. And so it happened. The little girl worked at different jobs, she cleaned up the garbage, and in the evening her brother asked what she was doing that stinks so much. At one of her jobs, she washed the dishes at night, and in the morning she prepared breakfast for her brother, who told her that he was in a hurry, and the girl overslept again. At her 3rd job, she worked as a courier and carried an order in the pouring rain. And her brother later woke her up saying that she was lazy and it was time for her to get up. The poor girl was absolutely exhausted, but she knew what she was trying for. And one fine day, Yunxiao burst into their house with the words that he had been accepted into the specialty of psionics. The guy was very happy, and his mother praised him for being a great guy. The brother leaned over to his sister and said that now she should understand who is better. Yunming replied that it was only because she did not go to the exam. Yunxiao confirmed her words and said that she would simply be wasting her time if she went there. The girl just silently looked at her brother and did not know what to answer, holding her hand in her pocket. The guy's uncle came into the family's house and asked if the guy really passed the exam. The mother confirmed that this was so, and they began to celebrate. Everyone around said that Xiao would become the strongest psionicist. The boy was slightly embarrassed, but he was sincerely happy that everyone around him was praising him and that he was the best. His older sister watched everyone rejoice for her brother and squeezed something in her hand. Some piece of paper that once seemed very important. After some time, the city of Chao was destroyed. A tearful Xiao screamed the name of his sister and mother while trying to find them under the rubble. He shouted their names more and more furiously and raked the collapsed house with all his might. At that moment, a bloody body appeared from under the rubble. It was his older sister Min. Xiao shouted his sister's name and tried harder and harder to pull her out from under the rubble. But suddenly, with his tear-stained eyes, the guy drew attention to the strange piece of paper that his dead sister was clutching. The unfortunate guy pulled it out of Ming's hands to look. What he saw, he could not imagine. He remembered the words of his sister, who said that she had lost her certificate and that she would drop out of school and help her brother with admission to the psionic school. And he also remembered that he had said that this was the right decision because she would have wasted her time. In Min's hand was her certificate, according to which she had the highest score in all subjects. Xiao began to cry as hard as he could, only now he realized what his sister had done for him. She sacrificed her future for the sake of her younger beloved brother, who now sits next to her corpse. 2 years after joining the association, Xiao accidentally stumbled upon the truth about what happened back then in Chao. Just one note, that an incident was discovered in Chao and instructions to temporarily do nothing. That is why now he will make every resident whose hands are stained with Chao's blood pay for their deeds. It is time to eradicate the association. Luan shouted to the teacher that he once said that he wanted to change the association for the better. However, his teacher, mired in hatred, had already raised his brush to summon the ink cell. At the same second, drops of magic ink fell near the guy and the cat. Suddenly, the spots rushed upward and formed a dense cage that restrained the hero. Xiao ordered Luan to sit here and not try to disturb him. The teacher turned around and ordered Qi Kui to help the other units deal with the reinforcements and buy them time. However, the fiery thug first wanted to deal with the guy who was running like an animal and was now immobilized. An enraged Xiao turned around and reminded him of what he told him to do. Qi Kui was frightened by the leader's gaze and replied that he understood the order. Luan tried to break the cage, but he soon realized that at the moment he could not overcome it. However, suddenly someone appeared next to him. The guy looked up to see who it was. It was an angry Zhao Shuyu who wanted to kill the guy for what he did to her sister. At that moment, Luan realized that he was finished. At the same time, the battle, which took place outside the exams, had already dragged on and everyone was tired. The blonde man from the defensive squad ordered his opponents to surrender. After they saw that the exhausted guys rushed forward, the blonde ordered his subordinates to surround the tower and save the examinees. However, suddenly he heard something and strange spots appeared in the sky. Instantly, they were hit with blows of paint that were so sharp that they pierced the ground. In the sky in front of them, there was him. The blonde recognized this man. It was Gu Yunxiao. He warned his soldiers about the danger and advised them to be 120% alert. After all, their opponent is not just a soldier but a legendary fighter nicknamed the Beautiful Panguan. At the same second, an enraged Xiao uses one of his abilities, Panguan Buddha. Meanwhile, Luan begged the girl to understand him correctly, because he did not do anything with Qingni. They are decent people. However, the angry girl did not listen to him. She said that the guy had a good tongue, but unfortunately, this would not help him. Suddenly, her sister appeared behind her and screamed for Shuyu not to touch him. She raised her hand to her throat and threatened that if she killed the guy, she would say goodbye to her life. The girl burst into tears and shouted that the fact is that she belongs to Luan. The sister did not expect to hear these words, and Luan was shocked. Shuyu became even more furious and shouted that the guy was definitely finished now. Meanwhile, Xiao finished the fight and the Buddha projection disappeared. The entire team that moved to help the students was bound by the force of the leader of the uprising. The blonde raised his head with difficulty and said that Beautiful Panguan was very mistaken. The guy turned around and replied that he would save his life so that he could see with his own eyes the beginning of changes. He contacted Lu Qing and asked how their worm was doing. The guy replied that everything was fine, and this time everything would work. At that moment, the worm sprayed poisonous clouds and all the examinees fell into a strange sleep, as if they were under control. An old man watched all this from a safe distance. He couldn't believe that all they could do was watch the students being taken control. At such moments, Yang Mu hated himself for not being able to fight anymore. The old man turned to the girl, saying that now only her clone is here, who can exchange information with others so that they call for help. The girl answered the sage that she had already done everything. But the catch was that due to recent events, a large number of troops had gone on missions, and besides, Xiao had scattered smoke bombs everywhere. In a word, now the only possible reinforcement is a detachment of the red shell. She asked the old man whether he thought it was good or bad if they came here. The old man just bowed his head and didn't answer. Meanwhile, Xiao ordered preparations to lift the siege when he heard that the examinees had been taken under control. The old man considered the decision about the red shell. Now there is still a chance to save and restore the students, but if they are taken away, then nothing can be done to help them. So even if there are casualties, it is still better than being completely defeated. Chenlin smiled sweetly and replied that she had already made a request for their transfer, and they were about to arrive. A red glow suddenly appeared above the battlefield. Xiao turned around, feeling a strange pressure. Meanwhile, Shuyu swung at Luan in rage. However, she did not strike him, but attacked the bars of the cage around the guy, which began to dissipate. At that moment, the girl grabbed the hero by the shirt and pulled him towards her. She told Luan that if he let Qingni down, she would rip his throat out. In any authorized organization, a critical moment may come that can lead to a clash, and it is at such a time that the need for the power of a secret weapon arises. The red shells were precisely such weapons for the association, which exist not for the sake of fighting for justice, but for a specific purpose, and now their goal is to defeat 12 attackers. One of the red warriors said that the guys had examinees hostage. He wanted to know what they should do with them, to which the commander replied that he did not know about any examinees. Xiao raised his head up and heard an order to attack from unknown enemies. These were the red troops that hung in the air in front of the rebels. The blue-haired girl shouted to the commander that they could fight them together. However, the commander did not listen to her, and instantly his hand appeared in front of them. A rift appeared in front of the detachment, and they did not understand why the captain protected his detachment from himself. Xiao replied that their goal was to take the examinees away and fight the association even then, and not right now. So his squad should take the students along the planned route. In the meantime, he will delay the association. The commander of the Red Warriors asked the guy if this was his final choice. Suddenly, Chi Kui appeared and tried to attack the red shell and burn them all to ashes. But the ardent guy was intercepted by the huge hand of the commander Buddha. He threw him towards the squad and shouted that they must leave. This is an order. The Red Warrior said that Xiao is worthy to be a commander, and he will be a good opponent. If he had not helped Chi Kui, he would already be dead because this battle is beyond his abilities. The desperate rebel commander grinned and asked if it was too presumptuous to say so. After all, their battle is rather beyond the capabilities of the red shell. A huge blue spirit appeared in front of the red squad, emanating from the guy's body. Luan also noticed the teacher's huge Buddha projection. The guy remembered that he had a relationship with the old man and asked if he was still here. The old man confirmed the hero's words, to which the guy asked whether his teacher was a good or bad person. Yang Mu thought about it. This was a difficult question because everyone has their own reasons for doing things one way or another, and he did not want to evaluate Xiao's choice. Therefore, he decided to tell Luan Xiao's whole story so that he could draw his own conclusion. Once upon a time, there was a boy who was driven by a sense of justice and talent. Everyone believed that he was capable of becoming a hero, and if there was a flaw in him, it grew from his very birth. After all, this boy was born surrounded by poverty. The Buddha projection struck first. With his huge staff, he tried to reach the enemy. The commander said that the lovely Panguan is a worthy opponent and has amazing skills, but his weakness is the range of his attacks. After these words, he ordered the first unit to surround the guy. The Red Warriors pointed their hands towards Xiao, and a strange chain shot out from them. A chain with hundreds of knives from different directions flew towards the rebel commander with great speed. At the same moment, chains as sharp as rose thorns grabbed Xiao and immobilized her. The commander of the red shells said that now they would tear him to pieces. The rebel raised his head and replied that he could not dream of it. The guy, through the pain, raised his hands in the air and began to spin the spear. At this moment, his colossal projection exactly repeated the movements of the creator. Xiao then slammed into the ground and his projection did the same, creating a destructive wave. Some red warriors could not withstand the force of the blow and flew away. The commander of the red shells shouted that while Xiao was attacking, he was vulnerable and he needed to be attacked right now. The second unit did not wait and immediately began to attack the guy with the Hammer of Paradise skill. Xiao raised his hands up and tried to defend himself from them. At this moment, he only wanted Lu Qing to take the disciples away quickly. Meanwhile, a group of students under control were leaving in an unknown direction. The commander ordered his soldiers not to stop and to starve the enemy to death. All this was observed by Shi Lili, who did not understand why Gu Yunqiao was protecting the others while the red troops were beating him to death. At this time, Luan was already rushing to help. He said that his mother had told him about the defeat of the city of Chao. Meanwhile, the teacher's strength was already running out. The commander noticed that Buddha was weakened. Now is the best moment to attack. But suddenly the shadows of different people appeared in front of Xiao. It was his squad that came to the rescue. They decided to defend the commander to the last. Xiao shouted at the top of his lungs that he ordered them to leave. But the guys disobeyed and rushed into the attack. One of them said that if it weren't for Xiao's leadership, there would be no point in their uprising, and they swore with their lives to be with him to the end. The Red Warrior only laughed at this because after the battle they had no supernatural power left. Two squads clashed with each other, the Red Shell and Gu Yunqiao's squad. They remembered the commander's words that their goal was to take the examinees away because the enemies are very strong psionics of the association and there is no need to oppose them and die. But it was too late. At that very second, the entire rebel detachment was brutally killed. The wounded Xiao screamed with all his might for them to run away. Sharp thorns pierced the blue-haired girl's chest. At the same moment, the red chain of death cut her in half right in front of Xiao's face. The commander's eyes filled with tears. All the people who were with him to the end and believed him were killed by the association. Again, the commander of the Red Warriors was surprised that the guy still had strength. He felt that the atmosphere had become more dangerous. Xiao's rage knew no bounds. All his rage began to take on physical form. He screamed and cried at the top of his voice, and from such shock a new version of Buddha was born. Xiao looked into the eyes of his enemies and shouted that he would kill them all. Suddenly someone called him, calling him commander. Xiao was surprised and turned around. It was Lu Qin, one of his squad, who was leading the disciples away. Xiao couldn't understand what he was doing here because he should be near the students now. The Red Warrior ordered to begin. At the same second, the guy's hand in the center of which was a huge mouth reached out to Xiao. The guy pierced the body of the white-haired rebel right through. The pale killer raised his eyes and, smiling, asked for forgiveness from his former commander. The moment he pulled his hand out of Xiao's body, Luan and Qingni came running. The hero was shocked by the picture he saw. The traitor's hand began to gradually suck the energy from Xiao's body. The hidden boys smiled and told the commander that it was all over now. Xiao, who was coughing up blood but was still conscious, could not believe that he had been betrayed. Lu Qin jumped away from the rebel and Xiao still stood on his feet, even with such a serious wound. The guy in the hood said that he was waiting until the commander had no strength left because his ability was not that good in recovery. One of the Red Warriors asked if this guy was a traitor, to which another Red Warrior replied that he was not. He was originally their man. Lu Qin unbuttoned his jacket and pulled out a red badge that looked like a shield. Xiao recognized him immediately. It was a sign of association. Now he realized that Qin was one of them. Since everything was revealed, the guy decided to introduce himself. He is a spy for the secret department of the Red Troops. He was assigned to Commander Xiao 2 years ago. The association immediately realized that something was wrong with Xiao, a native of Chao City. Talented, extremely stubborn, with a strong sense of justice, such a person could not simply be allowed to take a high position without insurance. Then they discovered 2 years ago that he and the 6th Detachment were planning something against them. But they did not dare to stop them immediately due to lack of evidence. After all, they were extremely prudent, and also very capable guys. It would be extremely wasteful not to take advantage of their talents. Hearing the whole story, Xiao rushed to attack Lu Qing. The guy only regretted that until today they had helped them very well. He then gave the order to the Red Warriors to finish everyone off. While Xiao fought with the warriors, Qin thanked him for treating him well, and thanks to the commander, the guy became stronger and grew in his abilities. He smiled gloomily and inhumanly, saying that Xiao made an ideal commander. Exhausted and wounded, Xiao continued to fight off enemies alone in every possible way. It seemed that he was holding on only on his unbending fortitude. Qin said that all these students whom Xiao planned to take with him to raise as rebels, he could still take with him. After all, his department in the Red Troops needs spies. but the whole world will only know that the attacker Gu Yunxiao and his squad kidnapped them. The words of the traitor irritated the former commander more and more. He used his internal energy and drove all the red warriors away. After that, bleeding, he rushed towards Lu Qing. However, the pale guy easily repelled the attack by piercing the rebel's chest. Indeed, in his current state, Xiao cannot resort to the face of Buddha, but his disciple is full of strength. Blood streamed from the man's mouth. Qin said that it was time to die and threw Xiao away. The fighter for justice crashed into the trees and then fell to the ground without any strength. Luan shouted the teacher's name when he saw him land. He, the cat, and the girl ran up to the dying Xiao. Luan couldn't believe what happened because his teacher was such a strong fighter. Someone in the distance ordered to finish off the rebel. Luan raised his head and realized that these were red warriors who were approaching. He looked at his teacher again and told him to be patient a little, and the guy would figure out how to heal his wounds. Suddenly, Xiao began to speak slowly, asking himself in a whisper if he was right. Tears appeared in the teacher's eyes. He asked if he had destroyed them all. His entire squad, which was loyal to him. She realized that until the very end he remained a simple fool. Drowning in tears, he told Luan that he repented. Qingni shouted that the troops were coming, and Luan told the teacher that he did not approve of his actions, but he was also disgusted by what the association had done. He remembered how the teacher looked when he said that if their world was not ideal enough, then he would do his best to change it. One of the red soldiers noticed the children and the rebel. Luan said that he would help him finish what he started and would walk his path in his place. The red warrior looked at Luan and asked who he was. Luan just looked at his sign which said that the enemy could be captured, and he took a bite. The guy got up from his knees and asked the girl to find a way to cure the teacher. The warriors realized that this guy was a student, but he heard their conversation, so he needed to be removed. At this moment, the system reported that copying was completed. Panguan Buddha, maximum level. Luan's hair began to turn from red to ashen. Then, when they became completely ashen like Xiao's, he said that instead of a teacher, he would turn the association upside down. The red warrior looked at the guy and did not understand what was happening. A red explosion of unprecedented power instantly formed at the place where Luan stood. Lu Qin, leaving with his red friends, heard something strange and turned around. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Panguan's red Buddha stood in front of him. He couldn't believe that Xiao was still alive. Luan took the first step towards his enemies. The pale guy panicked and ordered his red warriors to capture and destroy him. And our hero, similar in appearance to Xiao, rushed towards Lu Qing. Luan shouted that his teacher was good-natured and left them alive, but he would not spare anyone. The Buddha projection summoned its staff to attack. He then slammed into the ground. A huge red energy of pure rage pierced the ground and destroyed everyone within the blast radius. Lu Qin watched his soldiers die one after another as something red rushed straight towards him. He didn't have time to react when Luan's fist immediately flew into his face. The force of the impact was so high that the guy rolled several meters before stopping. His face was smashed into pieces and his nose was broken. One of his subordinates sat down next to him and asked if he was okay. Without answering Comrade Qin, he grabbed him with his hand. The warrior did not understand what was happening, and all the vital energy gradually left his body and passed on to the guy. A couple of seconds later, the warrior was lying on the ground and Qin stood up. He realized that it was not Xiao, but that nasty boy. But where he got the Buddha face ability remains to be seen. But he didn't have time to find out because Luan was already in front of him. The fast guy again hit the traitor right in the face. However, Qin was not so simple and managed to grab it with his hand. He told Luan that he was not as strong as his teacher, and his sucking ability was much stronger than the guy's. Luan's power gradually began to pass to Qin, who laughed loudly. But the hero had an ace up his sleeve. He turned his hand into sharp claws. At the same moment, he cut off Qin's hand. The villain began to scream at the top of his lungs because his most powerful weapon was cut off with one swing. Luan did not stop and struck multiple blows with his claws at Lu Qing. The traitor's body was cut like butter, and more wounds appeared on it. He called out to the only thing that could save him right now, his worm. A huge carnivorous worm heard its owner and was already rushing to his call. It's amazing how such a huge creature covered such a distance in a short time, but it was already standing behind Luan. Bleeding Lu Qin ordered the worm to kill the guy. The animal obeyed and at that very second released its sticky saliva at the hero. The saliva got into his back and, like a web, prevented the guy from moving. Meanwhile, the wounded Lu Qin tried to take advantage of the situation. Luan got angry. He turned his hand into a claw and told the worm not to even think about trying to take away his power. After these words, the guy jumped on the enemy and struck him in the stomach. Luan had to cut the worm, but nothing happened because he was fed up with the ability to heal wounds, and now his regeneration has increased several times. The worm decided to counterattack and again spat out its saliva at the hero. The saliva tied Luan like strong ropes. The guy realized that coping with a spiritual animal of such size was more difficult than he had imagined. Meanwhile, the wounded Chin, missing one arm, ran further into the forest and was glad that the worm had delayed his opponent. Luan also understood this. He knew that fighting with an animal was not a very good option, because then the squinted guy would leave. He watched his enemy go further and further. He urgently needed to come up with something. Suddenly, his new allies appeared in front of the hero, Zinni and Lala. This was very opportune. The guy was very happy about the appearance of the duet. Zinni stood in a welcoming pose and said that the cat heroine and her favorite were already here. Lala confirmed her words with a loud meow. Help is of course good, but Luan was interested in what happened to the teacher. Zinni said that she and the cat are not doctors and someone else will take care of him. She remembered Shilili, who said that she would take care of the teacher, and they should go help Luan. The girl said that they would deal with this worm and let the guy catch up with that squinting guy, but Luan doubted that they could handle it. Two furious cats looked at the guy aggressively. Zinni's fur stood on end, and she said that not a single mortal dare doubt the cat heroine and her favorite. Luan realized that it was better not to argue with the girl and wish them good luck. Then he ran as fast as he could towards the undead enemy. The girl and the cat were left alone with the worm, and Zinni was happy that she would finally be able to show herself in action. The worm did not attack, but looked at the strange cats, to which Zinni said that it was clear from him that he was timid. After these words, the worm opened its hellish mouth and spat its saliva into them. The ferocious cat and her companion were instantly covered in sticky mucus. However, this did not upset Zinni. She told Lala not to be afraid because she would take care of everything. Suddenly, the girl heard a loud, furious meow, and Chinny immediately looked back. Standing next to her was not little Lala, but a furious, huge red beast. Zinni was in shock. The battle began, the worm attacked first and decided to bind our girls. But Lala was able to deftly dodge dangerous projectiles. Then the furious cat took advantage of the moment and attacked the monster with its claws. The cut went straight down the body of the worm. She did better than Luan, and the monster's body began to tear apart at the cut site. However, the worm did not stand aside and managed to grab Lala with its threads. At the same moment, the threads became covered with blue light. The worm released electricity through its saliva to hit Lala. However, Zinni did not stand aside and jumped towards the cat, ordering the worm to leave her pet. Kinney slammed her hand down on the worm's threads, but to her surprise, it didn't do any damage to them. The girl pretended that this was the plan and said that it was just a distraction. And now the real attack. After these words, she sent her ghostly spirits in the form of cats to the head of the worm. The ghost cats immediately hit the monster by exploding. Lala was saved from the monster. Zinni told her that this worm has rough, thick skin, and it will be difficult to control it, so Lala needs to do something about it as soon as possible. The fog from the explosion cleared and the worm immediately attacked the girl, not allowing her to finish speaking. The monster stuck into the ground and everything around began to shake, but our heroes miraculously managed to dodge. Lala stood up and immediately began to form a strange ball with her mouth. Immediately, the ball became larger, and the cat shot a bomb at the annoying worm. Lala was pleased with herself. She knew that people couldn't survive something like this. The huge body of the worm was covered with many wounds. Zinni was already rejoicing at the victory. She praised the cat and said that it deserved to be called her pet. The body of the worm had split into several pieces, and now it looked like sliced sausage. But victory was still far away, because each part of the body began to turn into a separate small worm. The worms released smoke, and the girl became angry because of the monster's vitality. Zinni covered her nose. She realized that this was the same smoke that was used on the students, and she did not want to become weak-minded. Meanwhile, Luan used his shadow step at full power and was already catching up with his opponent. He quickly overtook the cripple and happily jumped on top of him. The moment he found himself above the head of the squinting guy, Luan activated the face of Buddha, and a huge red projection hit the traitor with its weapon. The force of the blow was colossal. Lu Qing immediately lost his arms and legs. He could no longer escape and began to beg for mercy. He said that the main villain here is Gu Yunxiao, and he is on the side of justice because he is a secret agent. The traitor began to cry. He told Luan to go and look for Xiao to kill, and not him. Suddenly, Qin heard a meowing sound next to him. It was a purple ghost cat. After a cute meow, the cat exploded right next to the guy's face. Qin screamed. His face was disfigured, and he called Luan all sorts of names. He just looked at the pathetic traitor. Then he replied that the guy had no right to condemn the teacher. After all, his entire family died, and in his place Luan would not have lasted so many years in a sober mind. The association is not the direct culprit, but it is connected to what happened. The teacher captured the students only to tell them what the association really is, and not to harm. He remained decent until the very end, unlike Lu Qin, because he used the teacher and his comrades, looking for benefits and considering himself right. But the most disgusting thing about this guy is that he squints. After these words, Luan attacked Lu Qing with many cats, which made him a scarecrow. The guy didn't understand Luan's last sentence. It seemed to him that he was just looking for an excuse to beat him up. Luan replied that he planned to maim him half to death to give him time to think about his behavior. But Lu Qin simply laughed at this because his ability makes him immortal. But the hero's strength is already running out. After this, the traitor opened his mouth wide and ordered everyone to go to him. At the same moment, hundreds of examinees approached the battlefield under control. Luan watched as he was surrounded because he had completely forgotten about them. Lu Qin mocked. He said that there are several hundred students here. Will the red-haired guy have the courage to kill them all? At that same second, one of the students thoughtlessly attacked Luan, but he easily dodged. The zombie students continued to run after the guy, but he was fast and easily ran away due to the shadow footsteps. The traitor said that he and Xiao are very similar. They are both merciful and cannot harm the innocent, which is why Luan himself will be the reason for his defeat. But the guy didn't lose heart. He replied that since you can't kill them, you can just knock them out. After this, the hero began to hit the students so that they would lose consciousness, but without causing fatal damage. After a few minutes, Luan began to get tired. He understood that these were the strongest guys entering, and he did not expect that it would be so difficult. Now he has 1,000 points. Each will require 20, and don't forget about the main enemy. Meanwhile, his opponent stood in the middle of the crowd and shouted that he was forced to admit that people like Luan are born once every decade, and he is the strongest among all the examinees in the country. But if he thinks that this is enough to resist the association, then he is a fool and crazy. Indeed, today the association has strengthened its position and is widely known. It has more monster-level masters than stars in the sky. And in this world, psionics either join them or die. After these words, the traitor put his hands on the two students and sucked the life force dry. Smiling, he said that tomorrow's news would announce how Luan and his teacher killed these two students. Luan flew into a rage. He activated his shadow walk and jumped at his enemy. The guy was ready to tear him to shreds, because he associates him with that very dark side of the association. But suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his chest. The guy did not reach the target and immediately fell to the ground. His head was spinning, his body ached, and his legs did not obey him. Luan realized that he had no more strength left. Lu Qin mocked more and more. He said that the guy had been using his abilities for too long and had spent all his energy. After all, he lacked combat experience. The zombie students continued to attack the hero, but now he could no longer dodge them. Qin said that the winner is always right and no one will care about what really happened. The hero and Xiao will be forgotten very soon, branded as criminals, which they will remain for history. But he will become a hero who will be praised, after which Qin laughed very loudly like a true villain. He then ordered the disciples to kill the guy, at which point Luan became afraid. The old man and Deputy Zhao watched silently. The man asked the girl if nothing would change this time. He also asked her to suppress the bad news about the security department as much as possible. The girl smiled and said that newly hatched chicks throw off their unhatched brothers. Nature has always been cruel, but people have never called it evil. Man is also a part of nature. He is no different from other creatures, and Darwin's law reigns on Earth. So a pessimistic view of the future will only lead him to the grave faster. The old man replied that people are not like that, and Hao appeared on the horizon looking for his friend. In addition to Hao, other comrades also came who were looking for Luan. Luan heard his friend's voice and responded to his call, shouting that he was here. Fu Guangqun ordered the students to listen carefully. All the people on the battlefield are under control, and therefore need to be stunned, not killed. Zhao was surprised at what she saw, and the old man only smiled imperceptibly. On the field, there were not only students but also adult men who fiercely wanted to make their children human. Guangqun asked his father to urgently convene people. All these men are psionic slackers who owe him money, one call, and everyone is assembled, because his father is a member of the state committee. One of the formidable men approached Guangqun and reported that soon other comrades would arrive in time, and if everything suited the gentleman, then could he put in a word for them in front of his father? The guy answered in the affirmative. At that moment, Hao gave the arrogant man a kick in the ass and told him to go save people and not show off. The angry guy said that he just talked a little, but at that moment Hao invited him to measure his strength. Whoever stuns the most people won, Guangkun agreed. Together, the children and psionic fathers began to win the battle over the zombie students. At this moment, the traitor, who a couple of minutes ago was rejoicing at his victory, realized that the situation had turned not in his favor. Hao, who was holding one of the students, began to loudly call for his friend Lin Luan. The red-haired hero responded, and his friend was glad that he was still alive. Luan asked why he returned, and Hao replied that he took his father to a safe place, and then thought about how to help his friend, fortunately. Fu Guangkun instantly managed to summon a gang of psionics. The friend also asked why Luan was so battered, but the guy said that there would be questions later because their enemy wants to escape. Meanwhile, Lu Qin couldn't think of anything better than to just run away as fast as he could. Luan wanted to chase him, but he still didn't have the strength. Suddenly, Hao said that he had a solution because he knew that his friend would be exhausted from fighting so much and therefore brought one thing. The guy took out of his pocket a strange little flask with 2 letters A on the label. He said it was a level A miracle reagent that his family had been keeping for years. The guy couldn't believe that his friend would share such a remedy with him, but Hao said that Luan would thank his father later. After all, right now their main enemy is running away and they need to catch up with him to restore justice. Lu Qing panicked. He didn't understand why these fools appeared one after another, and could they really hope to defeat the person from the association? He kept telling himself that he was a representative of the association, while an enraged Luan followed him. Seeing this hellish aura and power, Lu Qin was afraid. He couldn't just lose. At that moment, disgusting worms crawled out of the traitor's body. But let's go back a little. Hao said that this is a reagent that his father carefully kept, and this is his father's gratitude for saving him. Luan immediately drank the miracle medicine. Suddenly, he felt a powerful surge of strength, and it seemed that he was completely recharged. Luan asked his friend if they could handle it here themselves while he went and looked elsewhere. Hao replied that he could go and hit another zombie student. Luan's legs are electrified. His shadow stride is ready. His hair turned ashen again, and now it was time for justice. The one who thought that he was invincible because he was a representative of the association was instantly cut in half. Lu Qin could not even use his worms because Luan cut him into small pieces. He screamed at the top of his voice, and immediately a huge red Buddha leg appeared. Luan could once again summon the Buddha's projection. Seeing the Red Knight, Hao was happy because he recognized the projection of his teacher, which means he came to their aid. All the students and men finished dealing with the crowd and watched the powerful aura. Suddenly, Luan appeared in the distance and Hao called him, saying that they had dealt with everyone on their side. Luan turned to his friend and replied that he had also settled everything on his side. Hao was still impressed. He asked the guy if he had seen the teacher's projection and where he was now. Luan replied that the teacher had just left. It was good that he helped them solve this problem. Suddenly, our hero remembers that he forgot something. He forgot about Lala and Zinni. The red-haired hero told his friend that he had one unfinished business and ran away. Meanwhile, the frightened Zinni and Lala tried to escape from the huge monster. The worm united again into one copy, and now the heads of smaller worms protruded from its entire body. Zinni ran as fast as she could, and the poisonous fog pursued her faster and faster. Suddenly, someone summoned 3 scents of flame, and a small flame appeared in his hand. A bullet from the fire flew past the fleeing Chinny. There was an explosion, and the cute heroine and her pet, as if in a movie, flew up from the shockwave. But the landing was not so soft. Sister Qingni hit Chu Kui on the head and yelled at him for almost burning her sister. Shu Yu calmed down and ordered her sister to get up immediately, otherwise the fog would cover them. Fire will only help for a while, because the worm has absorbed the reagents intended for the examinees, and they will not be able to defeat it. We need to take away the students and Xiao, because the hallucinogenic fog is a very powerful thing. The heroes ran away from the deadly smoke, and Chu Kui covered them, shooting from his fiery fingers into the fog. Suddenly, someone next to them said that this was not the end. The heroes turned around to see who it was, but because of the fog, nothing was visible. The unknown person ordered the evil worm to stop. Suddenly, the powerful evil creature obeyed and stopped attacking. At that moment, the heroes, frozen in place, realized that they had fallen into the fog. However, they were still conscious. Chu Kui asked his companion why the fog had no effect on them. A system table appeared in front of the unknown person, which signaled that the capture was completed. The huge evil worm at that very second turned into a small, cute animal. The plump worm fell into the hand of the guy, who said that he left the glasses for him. Now this terrible beast has become Luan's pet. Zinni, seeing the handsome red-haired man, immediately ran to him. The girl jumped on Luan as fast as she could and hugged him tightly. She began to kiss him, and Luan tried to move her away because her sister was looking at them. Moreover, they first need to find a teacher, whom Shi Lily is looking after. A little later, they came to the girl and Luan asked her about the teacher's condition. The girl replied that he was still alive, but had lost a lot of blood, and he urgently needed specialist help. Luan understood everything and replied that they would take him away because Hao and the others would come soon and they should not see Xiao in such a state. Chu Kui intervened in their conversation and said that the girl was also from the association and could not be trusted. She needed to be killed right now. Lily replied that the association consists not only of the Red Army and Lu Qing. In addition to Xiao, it is full of people who want to change something and are working on it. The old man smiled imperceptibly when he heard his student. Shi Lily ordered the guys to take Xiao because she considers them good people. After some time, Hao appeared in the clearing and asked his friend if he had time to sort out his business. The guy also asked if he had seen the mentor, but they couldn't find him anywhere. Luan replied that he was injured and that's why he left. But he would be fine. There was no need to worry. A little earlier, the guy left Zhao to his new comrades. Zinni could not hold back her tears and sobbed very loudly. Luan tried to calm her down by saying that they would be parting for a short time, and until he could introduce her to Hao, it would be difficult for him to explain everything. The girl asked what the guy was going to do in the association, and he replied that if the world is imperfect, then he will do his best to fix it. He will follow the path of the teacher and do what he considers right. Remembering these words, Luan turned to his friend and said that they would enter the University of Psionics. The exam is over. The news on the case of the hero from the slums, the beautiful Xiao, does not lose the interest of observers. The association is worried that the truth about the destruction of Chao City may come out, revealing her dark past. Besides, the vast majority of those present there were put to sleep, so they know nothing. The association decided to hide Xiao's existence, instead reporting that they had eliminated the criminals who wanted to kidnap the examinees, and the beautiful Pangguan disappeared after being wounded. Life is gradually returning to normal, and some woman was showing off her son to the cellar. Luan's mother approached her, and the woman immediately noticed her friend. She laughed and asked if Luan had taken the exams, because her son was in 15th place and he would probably be able to get into university. After that, she looked at Luan's mother indifferently and asked how her son passed. Mom smiled sweetly and replied that her son had been accepted into the University of Psionics. The woman at first grinned, expecting that her son did not enroll. And then, when Luan's mother's words reached her, she fell into shock. Later in the evening in the hero's apartment, his mother called him to the table. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Mom was surprised that someone came to them so late. She opened the door and saw Chunggong and his assistant, who said that they had come to congratulate Luan on his admission. Seeing the swindler on the doorstep, the mother was surprised, but he replied that he was no longer a swindler, but her son's best friend. Then strange guys appeared on the threshold with fish in their hands. Luan's mother did not recognize these, but she was also amazed. After them, Chini appeared on the threshold with Lala, who introduced herself to her mother as Luan's new girlfriend. This information shocked the mother even more. After the girl, the guy's friends appeared on the doorstep and also came to congratulate him. Poor mother thought that apparently the whole city would come here today. A little later, Hao asked Luan why he called the villains here. The guy smiled and said that now they are all friends and they need to forget past grievances. Meanwhile, a secret meeting was taking place in the association tower. Zhao Chenlin was sitting at a wide table with an unknown man in the shadows. The man asked the girl if it was true that Xiao defeated Lu Qing and gave up trying to kidnap the students. Chenlin was still calm and replied that as far as she knew, everything was exactly like that. The stranger said that he heard that one of the students in particular stood out. Chenlin smiled and replied that she had not noticed anything like that. A little later, our heroes headed to the entrance ceremony. A lot of people came. About 3,000 students from all 4 districts were here. Fu Guangkun snorted arrogantly, saying that the guys acted like they were from the village. But unlike them, he once gave a report to hundreds of thousands of people without worrying at all. Suddenly, our heroes noticed that there were especially many people in one place. A big pumped-up guy claimed that their western region is the strongest because there are only athletes here. Another guy in a business suit answered him that in his area there are only thick-headed jocks, and they are not their rivals. The best people live in the south. Guangkun, in his usual manner, said that apparently it was the local idiots who caused a commotion. Luan noticed that there are a lot of people today, and this is a great chance to earn some points, but he needs to calculate everything. The guys on both sides of the barricade continued to argue more fiercely about whose region was cooler, the the western, or the southern. Suddenly, Luan laughed very loudly and called everyone around him simpletons. The crowd died down, and all the bullies turned to see who the brave one had appeared. The crowd dispersed and they saw Luan, who said that none of them are strong because they are all scum. After all, the strongest region is the eastern one, and they will tear them all to pieces. The blonde asked if this area was hypnotized, because of which the exam was never completed, and the association missed them all out of pity. The system reported multiple points gained due to hostility, which certainly made Luan happy. Suddenly, Luan said that this is all because there is an incomparable person in their area, capable of defeating 100,000 people in a second. Handsome and macho, sir. Fu Guangkun. Poor Guangkun broke out in sweat because he realized the situation he was in. And the guys continued to jump around him and shout that he was their strongest master. But the guys from the west and south were not laughing. They decided to actually test how strong this guy was. Luan did not waste time and quickly grabbed his friend by the collar to quickly escape from here. While running away, Luan was happy that he had earned a lot, but he did not notice the obstacle in his way. The guy slammed his head into it and immediately fell. He looked up to see who stood in his way. It was the Thunder Tiger Wang man who asked the guy who he was. Suddenly, the man remembered that he was the one who crippled his stupid nephew. It seemed that now Luan would be in trouble, but someone appeared behind the Thunder Tiger. The thug turned around to see who called him. It was the old rector of the University of Psionics, who asked not to scare his new students. The old man said that he is not interested in what happens outside the university, but while the tiger is on its territory, he forbids threatening students. Surprisingly, the Thunder Tiger immediately cooled down and fell silent. Then he turned to Luan and said that it was better for the guy not to come across him on the street. The head teacher also arrived and told the tiger not to be angry because he was specially invited from the association to take part in the opening ceremony of the school year. Then the head teacher, in a more stern manner, ordered Luan and his friends to quickly change into their uniforms and go to the assembly hall. Our heroes did not contradict and did as the head teacher said. Luan and Hao were surprised at how beautiful their uniforms were, and Guangkun still called them simpletons. On one of the rows, unknown guys saw our heroes and everyone else noticed them too. Luan understood that they had noticed Guangkun. The guy said that the year had just begun, but everyone already knew about him and everyone wanted to compete with him. The guys from the two districts whispered among themselves, asking if this was the guy who said he was the strongest. Guangkun could not stand it and shouted to Luan that this was all because he called the eastern region the strongest, to which he replied that it was, and he needed to relax. At that moment, the rector appeared on the stage and coughed quietly. Suddenly, the whole hall stopped making noise, and there was silence in the large hall. Luan was surprised that the old man simply coughed and everyone fell silent. The rector didn't even need a microphone to speak. The old man greeted all the students and said that his name was Fan, and he is the rector of this university. Fan continued. He understands that no one wants to listen to the old man's story, but nothing can be done because speech is the only way to convey one's thoughts. After these words, everyone in the hall laughed. This university was founded by an association, so when children join, they will technically become half members of the association. And from now on, their every word and action will be watched. But the old rector hopes that one day the students will be able to achieve more than the association. These words touched Luan. He heard something that was dear to him. The old man finished and went to his place, and the head teacher thanked him for his speech. And now, he asked to greet one of the chairmen of the association, Quan Ming, who prepared a speech for the students. The chairman smiled and greeted everyone in the room. He then said that his main interest was games. Hao did not immediately understand what the chairman said and asked his comrades what he said about his interests. Guangkun replied that he did not know anything about what the chairman meant, because the management of the association is a mysterious place. Quan Ming continued by saying that resources containing supernatural power are very important to the association, and that is why their extraction is constantly the focus. The first good news is that they recently found a completely new vein, the scale of which is not inferior to the Liu Tao mountain range, and excavations will begin soon. All the students were surprised by this news, but Quan had second good news. The association decided to allow students to participate in the process. All this time, the rector looked at the chairman with contempt and remained silent. And the students were even more shocked that they would be able to participate in the extraction of resources for the association. Quan said that mining ore is not an easy task, and they will encounter unprecedented beasts and bad weather conditions, which is why they need security, but what seems like an opportunity may turn out to be the reason for the death of the students. It is impossible to count how many 5-star psionicists have taken off after participating in mining. For example, Mr. Thunder Tiger is one of them. For any psionicist, taking part in the development of ore deposits is a dream. Of course, this is very dangerous for students, so the association will select only the 3 strongest students. The students stood up from their chairs after hearing what they heard. They could not believe that they would only take 3. The chairman put his hand in his pocket and asked them not to be upset because the selection would be carried out in good faith. He took a gold badge in the form of a shield from his pocket and said that this was a qualification badge, and whoever got it would be able to participate in the development. 3 badges were already included in the selected students' uniforms. The students immediately began to look for badges in their pockets but could not find anything. Kwon added that the badges are not an indicator of the final result, because the result will be known in 3 days. Now it became clear what games the chairman likes to play. He wants them to fight with their classmates. The students were not enthusiastic about such assignments, but everyone wanted to get involved in the development. Kwon said that now they would name the 3 students who received the badges and called the head teacher to help him with this. The head teacher happily walked onto the stage and turned on the screen. There were 3 black plaques on the screen, and the chairman announced the first owner of the badge. Yedao, a third-year student on a full scholarship, is ranked 23rd on the university's top list. The second owner is Yan Gani, a third-year student, a member of the research group, and a weapons expert. There was discontent among the students because the badges were given to some monsters, and they would not be able to take them away from them. It was dishonest. Kwon immediately calmed the crowd by saying that the third holder of the badge was a first year. Luan was happy that the third guy would be among them. The chairman said that the third owner participated in the events of the attack by intruders during the examination. He was brave and resourceful. He promptly called the psionics who helped repel the attack of the villains. It was Fu Guangkun. Luan and Hao were shocked when they learned that the third owner of the badge was their friend. At this moment, Fu Guangkun realized what a deplorable situation he was in. The chairman smiled evilly and said that he would look forward to the results in 3 days. After the meeting, the guys heatedly discussed what they had heard. Murders were prohibited, but otherwise there were no restrictions. One could resort to any methods to take away the badge. Some refused to take part in this so as not to get hurt, because many understood that there was no chance against 2 senior students. But the newcomer Guangkun was a real weakling. It was worth starting with him. Guangkun also understood this. He knew that all the guys would start their collection of badges with him. The guy asked his friends to help him. After all, right now a crowd of students was already standing in front of him, pinning them into a corner. Give it back. Know your place and quickly chase the badge. Give it back and we will do without bloodshed, the students shouted to Guangkun. Luan asked his friend if he even wanted to mine ore. Of course I want to. This is the cherished dream of any psionicist. But I didn't think that I would have to fight with everyone for this dream. The crowd of students realized that the guy would not just give up his badge, and so they decided to take action and take it by force. Luan shouted for the guy to give him the badge, but he froze in place. So the main character decided to act on his own and snatch the badge from the guy. Then Luan made an unobvious move that shocked all the students. He simply threw him into the air and sent him far into the clouds. Everyone turned to look at the flying icon, but Guangkun was most amazed. Meanwhile, Hao and Luan took advantage of the distraction. They grabbed the frozen Guangkun and ran away. A few minutes later, they broke away from the angry crowd. Guangkun still couldn't believe what Luan had done. He wanted to kill the guy. But the hero saved him, so Guangkun could not kill him, and it would have been worth thanking him. But still, he threw away his precious badge. Hao and Luan watched their friend rushing back and forth and could not understand whether he had gone crazy or whether everything was okay with him. Luan decided to take pity on his friend and said that he still had the badge. Then he threw away the regular card. Guangkun was overjoyed to the point of tears. He snatched the badge from the guy's hands and began to kiss him. However, the guy was saved only for a while. Soon the guys will understand that it was a trick. He should think about what to do next. Suddenly, a familiar cat appeared behind the guys, who seemed to be calling them to follow her. Luan turned around and saw his friend, a cat that belonged to Xiao. The guys told Guangkun to find a good place to hide in the meantime. They would also think about what to do. And our heroes themselves ran after the cat Xiao. A few minutes later, the cat led them to 2 guys who immediately recognized Luan. The 2 guys saluted to greet the boss. Luan was a little embarrassed. He couldn't get used to the fact that he was now the head of the group. The guys asked how the boss's first day went. If anyone offended him, they would definitely teach him a lesson. But the hero replied that everything went pretty well, and the university's affairs were his personal affairs. Luan decided to get straight to the point and asked them why they came. He was also interested in what was happening to Xiao now. The guys replied that the teacher had already come to his senses, but recovery would take some time. The association people are secretly trying to track him down, so he asked them not to visit him for now. Hearing that everything was fine with the teacher, Luan calmed down a little and thought about it. He then said that they needed to quickly find out the whole truth about what happened in Chao City and make it public, so they could protect the teacher. Luan asked the guy if there was any evidence that would help solve the riddle. The guy said that year the terrorist group Fog captured the city. No one had heard of it before. Most of them died when the city was destroyed, but some were still able to escape. For several years, Zhao's key goal was to find them. He caught almost all of them and lived up to his fame. The news said that the Fog had arrived in Chao to seize the supernatural ore. But Xiao believed that if this were true, the entire city would not have to be destroyed. Therefore, he interrogated the criminals with passion, trying to find out the real reason, but none of them split and died as a result. She said that they were all very strong psionics. Interrogating them was emotionally difficult. He did not want them to die, so the likelihood of them dying at the same time was low. The only explanation for their sudden death is that they were killed to maintain a secret. The one who killed all the people of the Fog knew all the secrets, but the interrogations were not in vain. Something about that person became known. Firstly, on his body there is a tattoo similar to an eye, and secondly, he likes to play. The tattoo is understandable, but what does it mean that he likes to play? Luan asked. The guy explained that they were saying that during the torture, one of the criminals lost consciousness, but he constantly muttered that for him it was just a game. Luan thought about it. There were too few clues, and it was difficult to identify a person based on these signs. Although there was one candidate in mind, the hero decided not to detain the guys for long and ordered them to return. If any news appeared, let Lulu convey it to him. The guys said goodbye and went about their business, while Luan was thinking about the information he had received. The hero was walking around the university yard. At the same time, he was looking for Guangkun, who had disappeared somewhere. Works secretly, tattoo in the form of an eye, games. The one who benefited the most is the criminal. I read about this in a book on criminal psychology, who benefited from destroying the city of Chao. A silhouette of a man with purple hair came to the guy's head. He did not notice how, in his thoughts, he came to the entrance to the administrative building. Using maximum level perception, Luan did not sense particularly strong streams of supernatural power emanating from the building. Suddenly, someone called him, and the guy immediately turned around. But before he had time to notice, Chairman Quan Ming appeared next to him. Surprised, Luan immediately turned to the man, sensing his presence. He saw him next to him. The chairman stood silently as if he suspected something about the guy. The situation was heating up. The heroes stood silently when suddenly their silence was interrupted by a fat head teacher running after the chairman. Luan was amazed that he did not feel the emanating power from the man even at close range. He needed to take advantage of the capture. Suddenly, the system reported that it was impossible to calculate the enemy's will to live. It was impossible to determine the required number of points to activate capture. Luan stood in shock. He did not understand what this message meant. This was the first time he had encountered such a thing. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by the head teacher, who threateningly asked what the guy was doing here. Luan pretended to be a fool and said that he was just lost because the campus was simply huge. The head teacher asked what district the guy was from and what his parents worked for. Luan replied that he was from the Eastern District, and his mother worked as a nurse. The head teacher adjusted his glasses and looked at the guy with contempt. He thought that he was just a local stupid boy. Meanwhile, Luan continued to look at the man with a stupid look. The head teacher believed him and told him to get out of here because he shouldn't be here. Luan exhaled with relief, noting that the head teacher was a rather nasty guy. Suddenly, he called the head teacher and asked him to wait a little. The man asked what he needed, and Luan asked if the head teacher could get him nude photos of the chairman. What? Nude photos? What are you talking about? The head teacher asked, looking at the stupid guy. Why would I do this for you? Do you want me to expel you for such jokes? No, you're just doing me a favor, Luan said. And at that moment, the system reported that the capture was completed, and he received the maximum level sycophancy skill. After a few seconds, the head teacher turned from an angry man into a kind and obedient person who happily agreed to help the guy. After some time, the head teacher came to the chairman. He opened the door and asked what he wanted at such a late hour. The head teacher was holding 2 glasses of wine in his hands. He suddenly sneezed and allegedly jerked accidentally. The wine spilled and stained the chairman's snow-white shirt. The head teacher panicked and began to ask for forgiveness, saying that he just wanted to invite the chairman to have a little drink. Let me help you wipe everything off, the man said, and sharply touched the chairman's shirt. Quan looked at the head teacher with a cold gaze and asked what he was doing. Instantly, the man was thrown out the door. The head teacher was catching his breath. He almost died of fear there in the room. Then it was only up to Luan. Quan walked slowly around the room and thought that the head teacher was simply a non-entity. It was a mistake to appoint him to a position at the university. He slowly unbuttoned the buttons on his stained shirt. Everything was about to become clear. After a few seconds, Quan unbuttoned his shirt to reveal a large tattoo of an eye on his chest. Meanwhile, Luan, who was watching him, saw the tattoo and immediately realized that the very person who knows all the secrets is the chairman. However, the man immediately felt something. Luan realized that he had been noticed. He became worried and could not hold back the flow of supernatural power. Quan stood motionless in the center of the room. Then he said that apparently there was a small rat in his room. Are you an enemy with a death wish or a fan? In any case, no matter who you were, it was unwise to do so. His look became crazy and he said, "For your courage, I will play hide and seek with you. I count to 10 and then go search." The chairman began to count. Luan realized that things had taken a dangerous turn, and he needed to get out of here as quickly as possible. The tattoo on the chairman's body began to glow purple, and he himself began to look even more insane. Luan realized that the man noticed even a slight presence of energy. He was inattentive, but the guy found out that the eye actually exists. The chairman didn't see him. You just need to get out through the shaft and squeeze in among the other students. But while Luan was thinking about the plan, the chairman counted to 10. It was time to move out in search of the rat. He threw off his shirt and his body began to become covered in black. Quan asked if the guy hid well. Then his body began to glow purple. His hair developed like a flame. His eye emitted a mysterious cosmic energy that did not bode well. Quan laughed, sensing the guy's psionic energy. Waiting no longer, Luan used his shadow step and immediately headed towards the exit of the mine. Sensing where the enemy was, Quan also followed him into the mine with great speed. Luan jumped out of the ventilation shaft like a bullet, but Quan did not lag behind him. He sensed where the enemy was heading. Luan began to get tired. His ability gave him incredible speed, but even with it, he could not break away from his pursuer. The chairman eventually beat him to the punch and jumped down in front of him. Quan raised his head. Pure madness was visible on his face. However, he saw a not entirely living creature. In front of him stood a purple cat filled with explosive energy. Luan was happy that he was able to outwit the man by leaving him a shadow cat. If the hero reaches the door, then victory will be his, and only after that he will discuss with others how to defeat him. A smile appeared on the guy's face, the doors were not so far away, and victory was close. However, an obstacle appeared in front of him that erased this smile. Luan crashed into an invisible wall. What is this? The guy rubbed his nose after the blow. Meanwhile, the chairman grabbed the cat by the throat and mercilessly blew it up. Quan was angry that the guy dared to joke with him. Luan, meanwhile, examined the invisible obstacle. He realized that it was some kind of barrier, apparently one of the chairman's abilities. Previously, the guy didn't feel his energy, but now it's everywhere. It seems he began to guess. Quan noted the guy's intelligence, but on his territory, no one can hide from him. After all, the entire house in which they were located was under the dome of the chairman. The mark on the man's forehead grew brighter and brighter. Not a single rat would escape from his territory. At that moment, Luan realized that he was trapped. Apparently, a direct collision could not be avoided. Therefore, if possible, you need to prevent yourself from being revealed, which is why the hero used his appearance ability, which dyed his hair an ashen color like Xiao's. He also put a mask on his face. A difficult battle awaits. The chairman was like lightning heading towards the guy, while Luan used his shadow cats to attack. The two beasts crashed into the purple figure, but an intact Quan appeared from the smoke, also moving towards his goal. Luan realized that the cats would not work on him, so it was time for the fierce claw. With one powerful blow, the guy hit the chairman and cut his left side. Did it really work? The guy looked at the figure of the enemy, which was missing one arm. But the chairman didn't care. He easily restored the missing part of the body. Looking at the guy, he said that he was sorry because, in this form, he was immortal. Is there really not a scratch on it? His body is seemingly intangible. Luan used Shadow Step and turned on full power. He began to run around Quan, analyzing the situation. Then the guy stopped abruptly and grabbed the chairman by the shoulder, using his absorption ability on him. The violet aura began to dissipate and circle around the guy's hand, but Quan remained motionless. He wondered where such a brat got such a rare ability. Suddenly, Quan laughed. He allowed all the energy to be absorbed because there was no point in it. Luan also understood this. The sensations were not the same as usual. His energy did not increase. So he clenched his fist tighter and all the power he had absorbed dissipated. The guy was breathing with difficulty. He was already pretty exhausted, but the fight hadn't even started yet. And the chairman had some strange abilities. And he continued to mock the guy. "This is not how you planned everything, right?" he said. However, Kwon did not expect to meet such a master at the university. He was unfamiliar with the guy's energy. "I don't know why you decided to go against me, but alas, you can't cope." Luan also understood this. Now his strength was not enough to fight such an enemy. Kwon asked the guy if he felt its power on his body. The fact is that in this area, all the energy is controlled by Kwon. The barrier absorbs it, transfers it to him, and so on in a circle. Therefore, he cannot be killed here, and due to the constant cycle of energy, he can continuously use his signature move without any loss to himself. So Luan can do whatever he wants as long as he doesn't die before Kwon has his fun. Seeing the huge ball of energy in the chairman's hand, Luan immediately became afraid. Instantly, the building lit up and an explosion occurred inside it. At the same time, someone slowly approached his entrance. It was an old man, Fan, the rector of the university, who understood what was happening here. The explosion hit Luan and the shockwave threw him aside. The guy landed, having traveled a couple of meters with difficulty getting up. He realized that he was finished. There was nothing to be done about it. The chairman slowly approached the guy. He said that they were talking in the eastern region. An outstanding student had appeared. "Could it be you?" Kwon demanded to remove the mask so that he could see who was hiding under it. Luan did not obey and only gasped for air. Then the chairman, in a menacing tone, demanded to take off the mask. But at that moment, the old man began knocking on the barrier, which distracted Kwon's attention. "How many times have I said that school is a place for learning? I will not allow students to be in danger. They don't take me into account at all." After his words, Fan put his hand to the barrier and it began to heat up. Then the barrier suddenly cracked and seemed about to burst. The chairman stood calmly. But then he became furious and shouted at the old man not to get under his feet. But the old man didn't listen to the man. He just continued to use his recovery ability. The gazes of two strong psionics met. They both disliked each other. Fan's gaze became more furious. He told Kwon to stop doing whatever he wanted. Kwon, in turn, invited the old man to measure their strength and find out which of them is stronger. Meanwhile, Luan took advantage of the moment. He realized that everything would be over unless he used a special ability. There was no other way out. Instantly, the hero was covered with a red aura and a huge scarlet projection appeared behind him. The image of a Buddha, the lord of the underworld. Seeing such a powerful ability in an ordinary student, Kwon became interested. The scarlet Buddha waved his huge staff. He then struck the barrier in which the old man made a crack. Instantly, the barrier burst like glass and the protection began to disappear. Luan was happy. This was his chance. The guy activated his shadow step. Finally, he was able to get out. The hero mentally thanked the teacher for his salvation, and the old man just smiled when he saw that a student from his academy was saved. The chairman stood motionless, his target gone. Kwon was amazed that the guy was able to use Lord Pangwan's technique and split the energy. The old man smiled. Mr. Yan was right. This is the same outstanding guy. Luan ran a sufficient distance, no one was chasing him, and his strength was already running out. The guy realized that he was safe and there was no point in hiding anymore. So he took off his mask and breathed a sigh of relief. Luan thought, most likely the destruction of the city of Chao was the work of the chairman. Although I was closer to the solution, I still attracted unnecessary attention. I'm afraid next time it won't be so easy to get to the chairman. In addition, the guy is not that strong yet. But the most unpleasant thing is that his capture ability does not affect him. Is it really because he does not have enough points? The hero screamed in despair. Why was everything so difficult? But in any case, he must tell the whole truth about him, not only to find a way to deal with the chairman, but also to keep everyone safe. The next time the guy will be able to get close to the chairman only when he gets to the development of an ore deposit. That's why Luan knew he needed to get this badge. The badge, it was taken away, said the beaten Guangkun. There was no place on his face without abrasions. Luan was shocked. Now his plan became even more complicated. He was taken away in the morning. Half an hour after you left, Luan couldn't believe that Guangkun lost so easily. He's still the strongest student. What could I do? I was alone. But there were many of them, all of them students from the southern region. The southern district was originally ruled by the military. The students there are close-knit. Anyone can have the badge. And students from other districts will never know who it is. They say that on the last day they will decide who will get the badge using rock, paper, scissors. In other words, in order to return him, you need to defeat all 500 students in the southern region, and this is impossible. Yes, Luan also understood that it would not be easy, because the main difficulty now is that he cannot stick out too much. But suddenly, a brilliant idea came to his head. It might not be necessary to go there in person. The next morning, in a spacious house, one of the disciples was sitting and meditating. Suddenly, he heard the footsteps of a man approaching him. A calm guy with red hair opened his eyes upon noticing the uninvited guest. "If you came to compete for a badge, then you are 101st, the student answered the unknown silhouette. The guy pointed to the badge lying next to him and said that if his opponent wins, he will take it. Those are the rules. He also asked to introduce himself because he didn't want to fight with a nameless fighter. Luan introduced himself as Su Dakyang, a new student from the southern region. New student? And a new student suddenly had the courage to challenge me? Self-confidently, let me, as a senior student, tell you about my abilities. Before becoming a psionicist, I was well-versed in various martial arts. After awakening, I achieved great success in techniques of supernatural power. Not a single student in this school has been able to defeat me in a one-on-one duel, the red-haired guy said, and summoned the devilish martial arts dragon. But Luan was full of confidence. He said that he was ready to get this badge at any cost. At that same second, a fist from a senior student flew into his face. A multiple flurry of blows fell on Luan. The guy beat him like a punching bag. From such a massive attack, Luan fell and flew several meters away. Suddenly, he stood up and said that he was giving up. He realized that he could not compete with the senior student. This can hardly be called a fight. The red-haired guy exhaled in disappointment and called Luan a weakling. It was really difficult. You are a very strong student, Luan praised the guy, but he turned around and asked him to leave. But Luan was not going to leave. He kindly asked the senior student to take a photo of him with the sign, because he wanted to publish his photo on Instagram. This proposal surprised the guy. He didn't understand why the newcomer needed his photo. Luan explained that if everyone finds out that he fought with a senior student, they will probably respect him. Now it's clear why this newcomer came. What a vain guy he is. The senior student agreed to the request. He pulled out his badge and struck a pose. Luan took out his phone. The hero asked the guy to look into the camera and widen his eyes. The phone began to take a photo and a bright flash appeared from its camera. This flash blinded the guy's eyes and he tried to hide from it behind his badge. It was this moment that Luan took advantage of to snatch his award. Then he ran away, shouting that the senior badge was stolen by Su Dakyang from the southern region. The red-haired guy shouted for the enemy to stop. But Luan had an ace up his sleeve, namely his shadow walk. Instantly, he flew out of the house, leaving behind only electrical traces and a stunned senior student. Damn, you think you can get a badge that easy? I'll dig through the whole school, but I'll find you. You won't get away with it. What was his name? Su Dakyang, from the southern region. A little later, the guy appeared at the hostel in the southern region. Suddenly, he noticed a familiar girl who also came here. They immediately recognized each other. These were the same senior students with badges. The guy and the girl asked at the same time, "And your badge was also taken away? And this badge was taken away by a Su Dakyang from the southern region?" Yangani said that this scoundrel came to her with a pitiful look and asked her to take a photo to publish it on Instagram. Yadao said that he was carried out in the same way, and at that moment they shouted the name of this scoundrel. Meanwhile, Su Dakyang seemed to feel that someone remembered him. The guy was wondering who had their badge now. There is only one badge for 500 people, and the guy understood that he was unlikely to get it. But still, he really wanted to get it. Suddenly, he heard something happening behind him. There was Luan, who quietly threw something into the air. Su Dakyang turned around and saw a badge with a cat keychain attached to it spinning behind him. The guy couldn't believe his eyes. It was a badge. It was clearly a gift from the gods. They heard his prayers and sent it to him. Suddenly, the guy was called out by a female voice that came closer to him. It was an angry Yangani who said that this was her badge with a cat. The girl threateningly pointed her machine gun towards the guy. "What other icon?" Dakyang asked. "Our badge is safe and we will not give it to you." Suddenly, guys from the southern region appeared near the guy. Dakyang ordered them to deal with the strangers. It seemed like this was what the seniors had been waiting for. It was time to have some fun. Several explosions thundered, mixed with the sounds of blows. You could hear the screams of the guys. The dust from the battle began to clear, and the first defeated guys from the southern region appeared. They lay and cried at the feet of the angry seniors. Yangani grabbed the blonde man by the jacket and demanded that he give her the badge. Dakyang was sobbing, but there was nothing left to do except give the badge to the girl, which made her very happy. However, Yedao's badge was not visible, and the guy asked Dakyang where his badge was. He fell to his knees and began to beg not to hit him because he didn't know where the senior student's badge was. Meanwhile, Luan watched the performance and was happy that the plan worked without even having to fight them. After all, the last badge went to Luan and no one even noticed. After some time, the voice of an adult man asked the chairman if he called him. It was Wang Man who suggested that the boss wanted him to protect those 3 students. Quan confirmed his guess by saying that if that's what he calls it, then yes, they need to be protected. It will be necessary to keep an eye on them and not let them get hurt during ore mining. The Thunder Tiger did not understand why the chairman was so careful because these were just 3 kids. But the chairman remembered that guy. In an hour, the names of 3 students will be announced and he will definitely be among them. After 3 days of fighting for the badges, it will finally become known who will get them. 3 winners were announced. The first 2 winners were the same senior students, Yedao and Yang Gani. They were asked to go up to the stage. No one in the hall doubted that they would win because they were too strong. But everyone was wondering who would be third. The guy assumed that the third one would be the guy who fought with Yedao. His comrade heard that it was Da Qiang, but the blonde said that it was not him. Someone called himself by his name. He was furious at such impudence and now he will finally find out who set him up. The head teacher said that now he will solemnly introduce the third winner. He is a real dark horse. And the third winner is student Lin Luan. The guy went on stage and turmoil began to rise in the hall. No one knew who this guy was. Luan thanked everyone, and the senior students looked at him with impassive expressions. In the face of the guy, they recognized the same Su Deqiang who had fooled them a few days earlier. The guys in the hall began to create more noise. They wanted to know who this guy was. Did he have a real badge and how did he even get it? Luan smiled sweetly and explained that he was just lucky. The fact is that yesterday he was walking near the school and suddenly noticed some shiny thing falling from the sky. Of course, he came up to see what it was. To the guy's surprise, when he came closer, he saw that it was the same badge. That's exactly how it happened, so the guy was just lucky to be in the right place. Of course, no one believed this stupid story. The crowd became more and more furious. A crowd of students began to shout that Luan was cheating. He was clearly hiding something, and the story was just a fiction. The guy's friends also didn't understand how he got the badge. Guangkun was especially confused because it was his badge. Everyone in the hall shouted that this was a scam. Luan just stood there and listened to the scream of the crowd. Meanwhile, his system was simply bursting with incoming notifications that said that he was getting 10 points for hating other students. Even Guangkun stood up to shout that this was his badge, but then Hao intervened and ordered him to shut up. But how can I remain silent if this is my badge? He stole it from me. But Hao understood that it was unlikely that Luan was just lucky, and it was unlikely that he simply cheated. While they were all having fun and making trouble, this scoundrel found a way out of the situation and took out a badge. Hao's fist clenched. It was unpleasant for him to realize that Luan had bypassed them. Meanwhile, notifications continued to arrive in the guy's system, and he eventually earned 10,232 points for hating other students. The head teacher shouted that luck is also part of strength. Whoever continues to be indignant will be expelled. Student Lin Luan deserved victory, but the audience did not let up, because even the head teacher defends him. Apparently, he bribed him. The most angry were the senior students, who seemed to be about to kill Luan right on stage for using them. The guy panicked and asked them to stop because he had not broken the rules. The rules do not say that the badge must be taken by force, and the hero just thought a little about how to get it without using force. Yadao turned away and said that the guy took a roundabout route. But it would be better if he gave up right away because kids have no place in the mine. Some die there in agony. But Luan knew that he was far from a weakling, and besides, he had a plan. The meeting ended and everyone began to go about their business. Luan stood on the street with his friends. Hao said that the trip would last more than a month, so the guy needed to be extremely careful. When the hero returns from the mine, he will become much stronger, to be honest. Hao was even a little jealous of him. One way or another, the guy will also train as hard as he can and will definitely become as tough as Luan. The hero looked at his friend and admired him. Hao asked Guangkun if he would say a few words to Luan before leaving. He turned around and said sharply that he would not lose again, and he would also defeat Luan 1,000 times. No, 100,000 times. Guangkun then turned around and left, leaving Luan with no choice but to accept this statement. After some time, the guys were getting ready to go to the mines in jeeps. Luan greeted the Thunder Tiger and asked if he was the leader of their brigade. Wang Man, meanwhile, was disappointed that even such a kid received a badge. Apparently, their university had completely slipped in terms of development. The senior students were also not happy and said that they should not be assigned to him because the guy ended up here by accident. At that moment, Luan realized that this trip was indeed going to be difficult. Meanwhile, the chairman was sitting in one of the jeeps and observing the situation. Among the candidates, he did not see that fair-haired youth. However, among them he noticed a young man who interested him. It was a photo of Luan who looked similar to that blonde guy. One of the officers approached the Thunder Tiger and asked permission to report. The man loudly announced that all units were formed and ready to depart. The time had come to leave. The advance unit was ready. The armed detachment was ready. The special operations detachment was ready, and the student brigade was also ready. And also the inspection team was ready, which included Shi Lili and an unknown man with glasses. Once everyone was ready, the officers shouted for everyone to listen to his order. He ordered the dispatch, and the convoy of jeeps went to the mines. The cars drove at enormous speeds to their goal, and in the meantime, the guys were told information about the mine that was sent to their watches. Its area is approximately 15 square kilometers. 2 months ago, it suddenly began to exude supernatural energy. The reason for this is still unknown. The technical department provided a diagram that shows the distribution of energy according to its concentration. The area itself is called the Crimson Eye. The guys looked at the goal of the task and noted that the square really looked like an eye. Now it's clear why it's called that. Luan was frightened by something completely different. Again, this eye, which he had already seen on the chairman's body. Yahello noted that the darkest area near the pupil is the place where energy is concentrated, which means that Wang Yu is there. The guy hoped that they would have the opportunity to see him because he is a living legend. Thunder Tiger asked who the red-haired boy thought he was. Did he really have the courage to chat about meeting Wang Yu? The guys did not expect such a harsh answer. It was unclear why the Thunder Tiger was so angry. The commander explained that Wang Yu is the center of the explosion of energy in the mine, and his strength is comparable to the strength of the entire planet. It is better not to think about him. Any contact is fraught with death, so you should not even approach him. Exploring the vein is an extremely dangerous job. The concentration of supernatural energy there is too high, which means that we may encounter especially powerful creatures and plants. After 2 months of observing the Crimson Eye, we managed to find out that it is divided into 4 zones. This time our brigade consists of 200 people, and we are taking students for the first time, so you will be assigned to the safest Zone C, and since Commander Wang Man is responsible for your safety, he will also remain in this zone. Hearing these words, the Thunder Tiger was not happy. A few hours later, a convoy of vehicles arrived at the first post. Luan asked if they had arrived at the mine, but the commander said that it was just a transit post. The association first of all took care of the presence of the military during the development of the mine. They are not responsible for exploration of the vein, but only ensure security on the territory of the mine. Attackers will not be able to get here under any pretext, so only our 200 people have access to the vein. The convoy moved deeper into the territory, and soon the bright sun set behind the horizon and night fell. The commander ordered all members of the brigade to turn off the engine and set up camp for the night. The convoy stopped and the guys got out of their cars. The senior students stretched. They wanted to sleep, but when they saw the enchanting glow, the guys realized that they were in the right place. In front of Luan stood huge trees that shone with a blue light. From a distance, they looked like huge mushrooms. The commander told the guys to pitch their tents, and tomorrow they will begin reconnaissance. But Luan stood motionless. He looked into this shining light, and it seemed as if the forest was hypnotizing him. Suddenly, he was distracted by a figure standing behind him. The man said that such mines can confuse people. It is better not to go there alone, because every leaf here can be dangerous. Luan turned to see who approached him. It was a man with glasses. He introduced himself as Yan Qi. He was from the supervision department and he was sent by Yan Mu. The teacher talked a lot about the guy. Luan at first did not understand who Yang Mu was, but then he remembered that this was the same old man in a wheelchair. Since this man from the supervision department and Shi Lili is here, Yanqi said that this is so. She is now setting up a tent. Luan suggested that their department controls the work at the mine, and Qi replied that they control a lot of things. But this time, their department has something else to do in this place. Morning came, the commander ordered the company to rise and ordered everyone responsible for Area C to form a line. A few minutes later, everyone stood in a line and the commander ordered the crew to check if everything was in place. Luan was also standing here. He noticed that there were about 30 people left in the Area C exploration team. The others were already moving deeper into the forest. Shi Lili too, the guy was jealous of them. But suddenly a noise like a scream was heard from the ominous forest. What's happened? Are they already in trouble? Luan thought. Suddenly they saw something explode. The mushroom from the explosion was so large that it was visible even from their position. The squad was scared, but Wang Man quickly calmed them down. Why did the herd of idiots go wild? Are you men or what? He then said that they would move out in 30 minutes. The commander understood the order. The Thunder Tiger walked away, and the commander told the squad to listen to his orders. They are responsible for the security of the outer territory of the mine in Area C. There is little risk of running into trouble here. Their task will be to patrol the area and collect psionic crystals. The wristwatch will remind you of the danger level of plants and animals you encounter, and will also suggest ways to interact. In addition, the watch has the function of determining your location and correspondence. If you really need help, immediately inform the command. Now we are preparing to split up. In 20 minutes, we will enter the mine in groups of 3. Luan was assigned to a squad with 2 other guys. One was tall with ashen hair, and the other with the same red hair as the hero. Luan tried to be polite and greeted his new comrades, saying that he hoped they would take care of him if anything happened. The guy with ashen hair told the hero to relax and they would cover him if necessary. However, suddenly the guy felt a sharp pain. At that moment, a thunder tiger was looking at them, and Luan did not notice anything. 20 minutes later, the teams moved to the patrol site. There was a rather interesting fauna of various mushrooms and plants. Luan moved forward while 2 guys from the squad stood behind him. The guy cut his way with a knife, cutting down another plant. Luan was amazed at how unusual they were and how they could grow to such a size. While the guy was busy with the plants, the guys from his squad smiled ominously and began to move away. Luan also noticed this and shouted for the guys to wait for him. The guy tried to catch up with them when suddenly the vines next to him began to move. Luan looked at the tree branch where he felt movement. It seemed like it was just a hanging plant. However, after a few seconds, the vines lowered and sharp claws appeared from the tips of the plant. Luan was surprised by what he saw and decided to immediately check his watch. The watch said that it was a snake-like vine. It attacks the victim and penetrates the body, sucking out energy. The best way to interact is to kill. Liana tried to attack the guy, but Luan easily cut her into small pieces. Pieces of the vine fell to the ground and dried up in an instant like deflated balloons. Luan immediately realized that psionic energy was coming out of them, and if you find the root of the vine, you could probably get a good piece of ore. The guy turned his head and didn't see his comrades anywhere. He tried to call them again, but suddenly he heard someone approaching behind him. It was a thunder tiger who said that finally he had a good chance. This time no one would stop him. It was time to pay the bills. Luan panicked when he saw a man who was clearly not in a friendly mood. He tried to calm the situation by telling Wang Man that there was no mortal enmity between them. Maybe only a small disagreement. And besides, his nephew started it first and Luan is not to blame for anything. The Thunder Tiger said that he does not know what his nephew did, but family is family and he must avenge him. The battle began and the Thunder Tiger attacked first using a clap of thunder, his hand immediately becoming covered in electricity. Thunder roared and a beam of lightning flew towards Luan, but he managed to jump away. The lightning did not hit the guy, but the trees that stood behind him were less fortunate. The lightning erased them, leaving charred tree stumps. Seeing the consequences, Luan realized that this would not end well. He needed to get out of here as quickly as possible. The guy tried to run away, but the Thunder Tiger did not lag behind. Then the guy remembered his ability to capture. Just before leaving for the mine, he saved up points for such a case. Mentally apologizing to the Thunder Tiger, he decided to capture it. However, the tentacles nearby beat him to it. To the boys' surprise, the fauna took advantage of the moment and attacked them with its vines. Both Luan and Wang Man did not have time to react, and the vines tightly bound them. Then, the creatures began to throw them and hit their heads against the trees and the ground. Ultimately, the tentacles threw them into some dark pit. For a second, the guys forgot about their differences as they tried to get back to their feet after the heavy blows. But suddenly, a huge cobblestone fell on Wang Man's head and split in half when it hit. The Thunder Tiger immediately lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Luan tried to call him, but the man did not answer. Then Luan took a step to approach him, but suddenly he heard a crunch under his feet. The guy looked down. He was shocked by what he saw. Luan was standing on a pile of bones. Many creatures had died here before him. At that moment, he realized that he was in a very difficult situation. Meanwhile, long vines like worms began to appear from under the pile of bones. A few seconds later, they were already filling the entire space. It seemed that Luan was in a den of snakes. The system also reported that it was a snake-like vine. Danger level D. Luan was furious that this watch had nonsense written on it. How could such a creature have a low danger level? However, there was a small note that in some cases they could form a danger level. a snake nest that had already wrapped itself around the thunder tiger and was ready to drag it underground. Luan noticed this in time and ran to help his former enemy. The guy used a fierce claw and cut the vines that enveloped the man. With difficulty, he raised the unconscious body and realized that it was better not to linger here. After all, the passage through which they entered was dragging on, and literally for another couple of minutes there would be no way out. Luan said that he did not plan to quarrel with Wang Man, although he intended to finish him off, but the guy could not leave him here to die so uselessly. So he grabbed the bulky body and threw it into the hole with all his strength. To his surprise, Wang Man flew out of the hole and crashed into a tree standing next to it. The man's bulky body fell down, and as he fell, he crashed into all the branches he could. But fortunately, he did not fall back into the hole. Luan, meanwhile, was left alone with the snake's lair. The tentacles rushed to attack. The guy tried to dodge them. Suddenly, a brilliant idea came to his mind. He wondered if he could bite and subjugate plants. To his surprise, the system reported that the guy could capture them. This would require 1,000 points. The guy was glad that his cool system was capable of this. One of the vines tried to attack the hero, but he dodged and grabbed it tightly. Our vampire then bit Liana in order to activate the submission. Liana broke free and stepped back. The guy wondered if it worked. Suddenly, he received a response from the Liana. Apparently, the capture had failed. Luan suggested that biting just one vine is not enough. It's like biting a person's hair. This means that you need to bite into something more important. Most likely there is a key root here. Luan used his maximum level perception ability and sensed where the psionic energy was accumulating. This must be the root. The guy was delighted. The hero called on his shadow cats. For this trip to the mine, he not only accumulated points, but also improved his skills. The guy pointed at the vines and ordered his shadow cats to blow up everything here. The cute creatures immediately followed the order and attacked the impenetrable wall of vines. The vines were charred, and after the smoke cleared, the hero saw something that resembled a hole. In the depths of this hole appeared the silhouette of a green monster with red eyes. The monster growled. Outwardly, it resembled an angry gorilla, whose hair was replaced by vines, and the monster also had bones of other creatures on its body. The system identified him as a wild beast, a creature in whose body a mutation occurred, as a result of which he lost his mind. He retained only the killing instinct and the creature's danger level was A. Meanwhile, the soldiers on the surface saw a shiny pink crystal. One of them was happy that they had just arrived, and he had already found ore, and the piece was so large that it was most likely Class B ore. Suddenly, their joy was interrupted by the roar of a beast that came from behind them. The guys turned around and saw in front of them a hyena with 3 heads, reminiscent of Cerberus from the legends. The watches on the guy's hands reported that this was the same wild beast as the one Luan was fighting. The watch also received a notification that a mutated scolopendra had been discovered in the zone. Following her, a mutated vulture and a mutated spider were discovered in the zone. The commander shouted that mutated animals were found everywhere in the zone. The troops should be extremely vigilant. He also ordered all troops to destroy these dangerous monsters. Senior students moving deeper into the forest also met one of the wild animals. In front of them stood an angry hyena with sharp thorns sticking out of its paws. Behind the hyena were 2 small puppies who were whining in fear. The watch also identified her as a wild animal that needed to be killed. The girl doubted this because it seemed that the monster was simply guarding its puppies. Suddenly, the rabid creature grabbed 2 small puppies into its mouth. The mouth slammed harder and harder. The puppies whined, but at one moment they fell silent when the mouth slammed shut completely. The senior students were shocked to see a horrifying picture of a hyena devouring its own puppies. The creature went mad and was covered in the blood of its own cubs. There was no longer any doubt. Yedao shouted that this creature had mutated and they should kill it. Explosions were heard in all parts of the forest as everyone fought with mutated monsters. The chairman, together with his squad, also made their way deep into the forest. His squad consisted of 5 people, including him. 2 of the squad were a guy with scars on his face and a pink-haired girl. 2 more guys were a man with a mask on his face and a man who looked like a scientist. They stood in a clearing covered with scarlet fog. The chairman ordered them to keep an eye on this place and not let anyone in. Meanwhile, a fight began between the hyena and the senior students. The creature opened its bloody mouth and attacked the guys. But Yedao was not afraid. He closed his eyes and focused on summoning his spirit beast. Then the guy suddenly put out his hand, and the spiritual martial arts dragon hit the enraged creature in the face. The whining dog immediately flew away from the guy. But this only angered the monster. The hyena stood on its paws and growled angrily. Yedao looked at his enemy and noted that they had encountered a strong opponent. Meanwhile, in other parts of the map, the fighters were already exhausted fighting monsters. One of the soldiers noticed that these creatures were much more powerful than the reference book showed them. It seemed impossible, but the guys were not going to give up. Meanwhile, Luan bit the green mutant. The system reported that the orangutan vine was tamed. The ability of the maximum level snake vine tentacle was copied. The terrifying monster instantly turned into a laughing monkey. Luan was amazed that even such an unconscious creature could be captured. What kind of system was this? The hero climbed onto the back of the monster and said that it was time to see what was so interesting in this mine. Meanwhile, in another clearing, the battle continued. Yedao used his writhing dragon power to drive the enemy into a trap. The blue dragon began to circle around the hyena, confusing it and not allowing it to pass. The guy shouted to his partner that now is the best time to attack. The girl realized this a long time ago and was already preparing to attack the enemy in a jump. The moment she flew over the stunned hyena, Yangani readied her machine gun. The cannon charged, and at the same second, a barrage of electric bullets fell on the creature. The machine gun fire blew up everything in its path. Her partner covered himself so that he would not be hit. Even the earth shook from such an attack. While still in the air, she ran out of cartridges and the girl greedily took in air. The dust from the raised ground cleared, and the heroes saw a dead, riddled animal lying on the ground. Finally, the battle is over. The girl noted that they are still too inexperienced for such battles. Meanwhile, the scarlet glow somewhere near the center of the forest became increasingly stronger. The chairman stood in front of a red cloud of energy that seemed to be about to absorb him. The eye in the center of Kunming's chest reacted to the emitted energy and also turned a little red. The chairman's squad at that moment stood at the entrance and waited for him to finish. Suddenly, they heard someone approaching them. The guy with the scars turned around to see who was coming towards them. It was Yan Qi, who thanked the squad for their help and asked if the chairman was here. The guys were not too happy with the inspector. They asked what he needed here. The inspector explained that, judging by his watch, the chairman's mark breaks off here. You yourself know that keeping order is our job. I don't meddle in other people's affairs, but I must make sure that everyone present responsibly fulfills their duties. The masked man replied that the chairman was safe now and they were in charge of this area, so they shouldn't mind their own business. He ordered the inspector to leave here, but the man pretended to be friendly and did not move. Then he said that each of them understands that exploration of a mine is not an easy task, and often someone dies. And if suddenly some inspector dies by chance, no one will suspect anything. The masked man's eyes lit up and he shot at the inspector. The force of the blow knocking his glasses off, and he fell to the ground. The inspector grabbed his watch and shouted, "What are you doing? I'll report this right away." But the villain quickly reacted and fired his beam directly at Yan Qing's watch. He came closer to the guy. Their figures seemed ominous. And then he said that the inspector asked for it. The beaten guy asked what they were going to do with him. He looked pathetic. But in fact, it was just a distraction. At this moment, he was thinking about Shilili. The invisible girl took advantage of her comrade's distraction and penetrated deeper into the zone. They remembered the words of the teacher, who said that the inspection was originally a department that controlled management. Perhaps for some, this became a stumbling block. Over the years, they have lost dozens of outstanding employees, and the influence of the inspection department has waned. Now the department is just a fiction, and these victims are now reporting that inspectors are dying in the line of duty. But they understand perfectly well how things really are. It is clear to everyone that the chairman is involved in something. The old man knew that his strength was running out, so he would personally go to the mine and try to restore it with the help of Wang Yu. This is one of the rare cases where Quan Ming can be killed. Shilili stepped forward and asked the mentor to entrust her with this work. The old man replied that although the chairman is weak now, this task is too dangerous for the girl. But Lily raised her eyes, which were filled with pain, and said that she had to do this. In the girl's memories, photographs of her family flashed, where at first they were friendly, and then her parents died. Lily ran towards danger and her gaze was serious. She understood that she herself had to deal with him. Meanwhile, the scarlet essence became stronger and stronger. When the time came and there was enough strength, the chairman decided that it was time to absorb energy. He shouted for the entity to return to him. He would finally get it. The center of the scarlet ball began to become electrified, and rays appeared from it and headed towards Quan. The villain's eye became brighter and brighter, and he felt him reaching for energy. At one point, the chairman felt the same surge of strength that he had dreamed of for so long. But his joy was short-lived. A blue blade appeared right in the center of his eye, which pierced right through it. The chairman looked at his chest and saw a blade along with crimson energy. He immediately jumped back, blood poured from his chest, and he did not understand what was happening. This was Shilili, who created a blade using her energy, she quietly attacked him. The chairman immediately realized that this was an invisible creature that could convert psionic energy. Lily rushed to attack. Those two photos of her parents appeared in her head again. It was time to take revenge. Quan did not see her, so he could not avoid the first cut that fell on his cheek. Then his body felt pain in all parts of his body. Lily did not spare him. She continued to cut up the chairman, inflicting hundreds of cuts on him. Ultimately, the villain fell exhausted to the ground. Lily looked at the enemy. At that moment, she thought that she had managed to defeat him. Meanwhile, her comrade was on his knees and raised his hands up. He began to beg the enemy squad for mercy, saying that he was wrong and would leave here right now. Yankee understood that most likely Lily had already finished and it was time to get out of here. The girl also decided so and turned around to leave, but that same red energy appeared behind her. Suddenly, Lily crashed into an invisible wall. She immediately realized that something was wrong. The girl turned around and saw how the energy was returning to the chairman. The man's corpse stood up and he said that it was painful. Someone wanted to kill him, taking advantage of the opportunity, and knew that he was weak now. So this someone is a person from the association. But you were late. You should have acted faster, but you can understand. You were waiting for me to be alone. Unfortunately, you didn't take something into account. You didn't understand my abilities, and by the way, I've already regained my strength. These words shocked Lily. How did he regain his strength? This can't be true. He couldn't do it that quickly, even with the help of Wang Yu's powers. The chairman called his ball and said that now they will see who attacked him. He ordered the unknown to show up, and then he will try to make a beautiful corpse out of him. Lily realized that now it would not be easy for her, and at that moment an explosion occurred. The inspector fell to the ground. He also heard this explosion, which thundered where the girl was. The guy immediately realized that it was Lily, and apparently everything did not go according to plan. Yanqi immediately jumped up and ran towards the explosion, but the detachment guarding the chairman was not going to just let him go. Then the inspector turned around and shouted for them to go away. His hand began to be covered with a huge mechanical prosthesis. Then the man hit the ground with his huge fist. It immediately split, and the ground shook. Taking advantage of the rising smoke and confusion, the inspector ran to help his friend. But suddenly, ropes flew out of the smoke in his direction, which immediately grabbed the guy and struck him with a bolt of lightning. The squad of fighters said that they would not let him go just like that. The girl noticed that the guy was only crying, but in fact he turned out to be a quite capable young man. Meanwhile, Lily had a hard time. The chairman launched one bomb after another, but the girl successfully dodged, albeit with difficulty. Quan noticed that his opponent had mastered the skills of hiding and converting energy, but it was only a matter of time. In any case, there was nowhere to run. His gaze became terrifying and he shouted that he was going to blow everything up here. The scarlet energy emanating from the center of the forest began to move further and further towards its borders. The senior students were standing near the corpse of the hyena. They were restoring energy when suddenly a scarlet glow appeared behind the hyena. Yadao told the girl that she needed to leave and find the others to recover. But Wang Yu's energy had already reached the hyena's corpse. Power filled the monster, and the once dead creature opened its eyes. The animal immediately jumped to its paws. This time it was much more furious. The senior students couldn't believe their eyes. They no longer had the strength to fight her. The enraged beast rushed at them, and at that moment the guys realized that the end had come for them. But suddenly the vine grabbed the dog by the paw and it fell a couple of meters from the target. Then more vines flew towards the beast and they completely neutralized it, wrapping its paws and mouth. The senior students watching this did not understand what was happening. Suddenly they saw a shaggy gorilla appear behind the hyena. The guys thought that now they were definitely finished since another animal had arrived. Behind the beast there was a dark figure who told the guys not to worry because their torment would soon end. The system window notified the successful capture. But they didn't hear this. The senior students didn't know what to do. There was no way they could cope with two mutated beasts. Unexpectedly for the guys, they saw how the hyena and the gorilla hit their paws. The senior students decided that now these animals are at the same time. The girl cursed the day when she decided to go to this mine. Suddenly, the monsters turned around and walked in the opposite direction, deeper into the forest. The senior students looked at each other. Were they really afraid of us? In addition, it seemed to the guy that there was someone on the orangutan's back. In any case, whoever it was, they were saved. Meanwhile, Luan, riding on a hyena, walked deep into the forest. The guy laughed very loudly. The hero said that he would become the future king of mutated beasts. They headed to the center of the vein. It was time to deal with all the animals using their own method. In another section of the vein, the soldiers were running away. These creatures were stronger than expected, and there was no better solution than to flee. Behind them stood an angry three-headed hyena, but at one moment it turned into three cute dogs. A spider with a dozen crazy eyes also suddenly turned into a cute creature. Next was the angry vulture, who turned into a cute bird. The last was the powerful centipede, which also became one of the animals in the collection. Meanwhile, in the center of the forest, the inspector was barely holding out against a detachment of fighters. The scarred guy was surprised how long the inspector could hold out against the four of them. But it was time to end this. Suddenly, they heard a strange rustling in the forest, the shaking of the earth and the sound of something approaching. The scarred guy turned around and didn't believe what he saw. A flock of wild animals from the entire forest was rushing straight towards them. All of them were aggressive. The girl, seeing this picture, did not understand why all these animals huddled together in a flock. This had never happened before. Behind the orangutan, a mysterious dark figure still appeared. Luan said that it's all because they protect their master and work for him at full capacity. Powerful beasts attacked the squad guarding the chairman. The orangutan attacked the scarred guy who deftly dodged his vines. A sweet but impudent girl summoned a shield in the shape of a bear's face to protect herself from the web. The bespectacled scientist used his whip to subdue the attacking dog. The masked man used his colossal strength and dealt with a three-headed dog with his bare hands. While fighting, the squad forgot about the weak inspector and he crawled away from them, watching in horror what was happening. Suddenly, Luan appeared next to him and asked if the guy was okay. The hero picked up the man and said that he would take him away from here, but the inspector was wondering how he ended up here. The guy replied that he was just passing by. Yanti was wounded, but he couldn't just leave because Lily was still fighting with the chairman. Luan was shocked when he heard these words and asked to tell him everything in more detail. Meanwhile, explosions in the center of the mine did not stop. Lily could no longer dodge so deftly and blood poured out of her mouth when another explosion managed to hit her. The chairman mocked the girl's injuries. He wondered how long she would hold out. But suddenly, his eye was struck by a beam of energy and pierced right through the man's head. It was Lily who attacked the enemy and quickly jumped back. "Whatever you mutter, now you are in my energy field. Here I am immortal, and you cannot escape from me," the chairman said, and his head became covered with electricity. After a few seconds, his eye recovered and, turning around, he repeated that the girl could not escape from him. Heart, head, nothing comes of it. No matter how strong he should be, the psionic energy collection center is supposed to be, but why doesn't he have one? At this moment, Lily looked at the clot of scarlet red energy called Wang Yu. It seems that only now she understood one of the chairman's secrets. The villain said that now he has played enough. There is no need to waste time. Otherwise, she will find out too much. The chairman decided that it was worth ending this. His body was covered with purple energy like a living bomb. He decided to use the explosion of the entire energy field. Wounded, Lily looked at the impending disaster and memories flashed through her mind. She remembered her parents and their tombstone, near which she had once sworn revenge. The light from the living bomb became brighter. The girl did not believe that she was going to die. She could not die until she took revenge. Suddenly, from under the ground where Lily stood, a huge mouth of a beast appeared, which swallowed her up along with the earth. A little earlier, Luan ran to Lily and recalled the words of the inspector, who said that almost all the deaths of inspectors are connected with Quan Ming, including the death of Lily's parents. She hid for so many years to take revenge on him, so now she is determined to win at any cost. If she fails to kill Quan Ming, she will be locked in his energy field, and for her, this is certain death. And since the energy field cannot be broken, Quan Ming will be invincible. At this moment, Luan suggested that any ability must have a drawback. There must be a place where the field can be bypassed. Yanti looked at the guy and asked, "What place is this?" This place was the ground through which the worm made its way into the field and was devouring Lily right now. The appearance of the worm surprised the chairman and the girl. A huge worm, as if on an exam, appeared from under the ground and swallowed her. Then the worm immediately jumped into the ground and burrowed inside. The chairman was angry. He knew that the energy field did not cover the surface of the earth. But in any case, he could not let his opponent escape. The chairman raised his hand in the air and summoned his ability. He used the opening of the energy field, and an insurmountable wall flew after the worm. The energy field cut the worm without any problems. One part was behind the field and the other was under it. The hero ran towards the worm. He put on his mask so as not to reveal his appearance. A girl fell out of the cut-off part. Fortunately, she was not harmed by the chairman's attack. Lily could hardly breathe. She was covered in worm drool, but she was alive. Quan grinned. Who would have thought that such huge worms were hiding underground? But this worm will not interfere with his plans, so the chairman raised his hand in the air and began to concentrate his energy. Suddenly, he heard someone approaching him behind him. It was the same guy who attacked him recently with ashen hair and a mask. Luan jumped onto the dome that protected the chairman and used the Dharma phenomenon. At that same second, a huge projection of a red warrior appeared behind the guy. He called upon Lord Pangguan, and the battle with the main villain began.